Chapter 160. Standing on a tree with half of its body charred by the lightning release ninjutsu, Uchiha Shinichi muttered with one hand on his waist, Hey, Kakuzu, can't you even deal with such a guy? At this time, Kakuzu calmly poked his body out of the ground and said in a deep voice, This guy is not simple. Bippa Juzo, who was carrying the beheading sword on his back, looked around the battlefield and said, Such a powerful water release ninjutsu. Even in the entire Mist Village, there aren't many people who can do it. Sasori put his hands into his ninja bag and said with a smile, Let me do it. I'm very interested in him. Orochimaru, with his hands crossed over his chest, leaned against a tree. His eyes only paused on Hyojin for a moment before shifting to Uchiha Shinichi. For Orochimaru, ordinary ninjas can no longer arouse his interest. The only one he really cares about is Shinichi Uchiha, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan. Orochimaru, Sasori, Bippa, Juzo, Uchiha Shinichi, Hyojin, who was surrounded in the center, looked around at the four Akatsuki members who suddenly appeared. His face was a little dark. He doesn't like to be looked down upon. So he jumped on a tree and said to the group of Akatsuki members who seemed to be eating him alive, Your organization really has a lot of people. Uchiha Shinichi said, Hey, it's better if you don't resist, lest I accidentally kill you. Hyojin glared at Uchiha Shinichi and cursed. This idiot. At this time, Bippa Juzo waved his beheading sword and pointed it at Hyojin. What organization are you in? Who is that bounty ninja named Yama? Hyojin pondered for a moment and said with a smile, Tell me the name of your organization, and I will tell you the name of my organization. Previously, he had used a large amount of dragon vein chakra, so his body had accumulated a lot of nature energy. Therefore, he needed some time to recover and wait for his body to naturally expel the nature energy that had dispersed in his body. Otherwise, if the natural energy in his body accumulated too much, his body would turn into stone just like last time. Bippa Juzo seemed to have the idea of recruiting Hyojin and said, The organization we are in is called Akatsuki. Your strength is not bad. Join us. Akatsuki, huh? Smiling, Hyojin said, The organization I'm in is called God. I think the few of you are quite strong. Why don't you join my organization? God. Sasori took out a scroll from his ninja bag and said, What a big tone. At this time, Orochimaru was also a little interested in Hyojin, who was wearing the Tenseigan armor. With the current 5 Akatsuki members on the battlefield, in Orochimaru's opinion, even the strongest ninjas of the 5 great shinobi villages with the name of Kage on their backs would be defeated if they came. And this Tenseigan of Amatsuki is able to remain so calm in such a situation. This alone is enough to attract his attention. Hyojin's eyes were patrolling between the 5 members of Akatsuki while secretly thinking about countermeasures. He did not panic because his current body was just a clone. There was still a spare Type B clone in the lab, so he could just give up on this Type A clone. The only thing he needs to pay attention to is the dragon vein sealed in his body. But this is not a problem that can't be solved. As long as he finds time to summon the wild boar, then put the gourd in the wild boar's mouth, and then remove the summoning, he can safely send the gourd away. Because there is a way out, he wants to try and see if he can save this Type A clone. After all, after the fierce battle just now, he can clearly feel that this Type A clone has a certain degree of resonance with his soul. This resonance is undoubtedly the most direct reaction to the improvement of compatibility. Suddenly, Hyojin's eyes stopped on Uchiha Shinichi, and a bold idea came to Hyojin's mind. If it works, he might be able to save this clone. Voila! At this time, Sasori on the opposite tree shook the scroll in his hand, and the word ice was written on the scroll. Accompanied by a puff of white smoke, a human puppet appeared in front of everyone. Hyojin looked over and found that the human puppet controlled by Sasori was dressed like a mist ninja, and there was even a forehead protector on its forehead. It was obviously a mist ninja when it was alive. Ice release ninja? With the identity of a mist ninja and the word ice on the scroll, Hyojin quickly guessed that this human puppet should be a user of ice release, Kekei Genkai. Ice release has a natural restraining effect on water release, So Hyojin did not dare to delay any longer and immediately formed a hand seal and shouted, "Water release! Water blast!" In an instant, a large amount of water rose from the ground like a tornado, forming a giant waterspout. When the waterspout reached its peak, with Hyojin as the center, the water surged in all directions. Facing the sudden, huge water wave, the 5 Akatsuki members did not waste their chakra to block it. Instead, they spread out and scattered to the treetops of the surrounding trees. At this time, to everyone's surprise, Hyojin took advantage of the water wave to get in front of Orochimaru. Water release! Water blast! A slender water blade sprayed out from Hyojin's mouth, drawing an arc and chopping towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru licked his lips and suddenly lowered his body like a snake, easily dodging Hyojin's water blast, and then stretched out his right hand towards Hyojin. From his right hand sleeve, a few lightning-fast poisonous snakes immediately shot out. Hyojin, who had already expected this, immediately formed a hand seal and shouted, "Water release! Water wall technique!" The poisonous snakes shot from Orochimaru's sleeve were immediately washed away by the water wall. While Hyojin crossed the water wall and rushed towards Orochimaru, sneering, "Let's get rid of the weakest guy first." Weakest? Orochimaru smiled lightly and faced Hyojin. If you are familiar with Orochimaru, you should know that although he is smiling at this time, but the flashing pupils have reflected the cold, killing intent in his heart. Seeing Hyojin and Orochimaru fighting together, Sasori did not rush to use the ice puppet, but stood aside and watched the show. Kakazu, Bippa Juzo, Uchiha, Shinichi, and others listened to Hyojin's ridicule of Orochimaru and did not rush to intervene, just stood aside and watched the show. After fighting with Orochimaru for a while, Hyojin suddenly withdrew and fled in the direction of Uchiha and Shinichi. Naturally, Orochimaru would not let him go, so he also chased after him. Seeing Hyojin getting closer and closer, Uchiha and Shinichi laughed and said, "Hey, you want to escape from me? Hee, you have the wrong idea." Chapter 161. For Orochimaru, who doesn't even care much about Naruto's position, the reason why he joined the Akatsuki organization is only because he covets the Rinnegan of the organization's leader, Pain. However, the cruel reality made Orochimaru understand that with his current strength, he is not capable of seizing Pain's Rinnegan, which has the title of Immortal Eye. Therefore, he can only take a step back and focus on the Manjikyu Sharingan. When he heard that there was an Uchiha clan member who awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan in Mai, Orochimaru was ecstatic. He felt that the Manjikyu Sharingan was already in his bag. But with the follow-up investigation, he was surprised to find that Uchiha Shinichi, who had awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, possessed extraordinary combat power, and almost with his own strength, he was able to turn the Mai clan upside down. Although this news made him more eager for the Manjikyu Sharingan, but at the same time, it also made him understand that it is not an easy task to seize the Manjikyu Sharingan. Recently, Orochimaru has been looking for an opportunity to make a move, but because the Akatsuki organization members are usually in groups of 2, and he and Uchiha Shinichi are not partners in the same group, so he has not found a good opportunity. Therefore, the current opportunity really makes his heart itch. Hyojin doesn't need to turn his head to observe to guess how hesitant and restless Orochimaru's heart is at this time, because no one knows better than him about Orochimaru's desire for the Manjikyu Sharingan. This is also the key to Hyojin's escape. As long as Orochimaru takes action against Uchiha Shinichi, then the current 5 Akatsuki members will immediately fall into division and chaos. At that time, he can find a gap to escape. Looking at Uchiha Shinichi, who is a little eager to attack him, Hyojin, who is running away, secretly thought, "Idiot, don't get your eyes dug out." With one fleeing and one chasing, Hyojin and Orochimaru quickly approached Uchiha Shinichi. At this time, Hyojin quickly printed the hand seals and shouted, "Water release, water clone technique." In the blink of an eye, Hyojin, who had activated the water clone technique, split into 2 and suddenly changed his route, evading the direction of Uchiha Shinichi and fleeing in different directions. Shinichi Uchiha frowned slightly. With his eyesight, he couldn't distinguish which is the real body of Hyojin and which is the water clone in an instant. Bippa Kakuzu, and Sasori, the other Akatsuki members, were also secretly surprised because they also couldn't distinguish which is the real body and which is the water clone. Orochimaru, who is chasing after Hyojin, didn't react to this because his attention at this moment is all on Uchiha Shinichi. At this time, he is only less than 7 or 8 meters away from Uchiha Shinichi. This distance is almost within reach for a ninja of his level. Shinichi Uchiha, who has activated his Sharingan, also noticed that Orochimaru didn't continue to chase Hyojin, who has changed the direction of escape but went straight to him, so he immediately asked, "What do you want to do?" Without waiting for Uchiha Shinichi to finish his words, Orochimaru stretched out his right hand, and his whole body flew out like a cannonball, going straight for Uchiha Shinichi's Sharingan. Uchiha Shinichi did not panic, as Orochimaru expected, but completed the hand seals in an instant, and opened his mouth to spit a large flame at Orochimaru. Hua! The powerful fire release ninjutsu turned the whole forest red. "I'll take your eye." However, Orochimaru didn't dodge, and used his body to resist Uchiha Shinichi's fire release ninjutsu. Even if his skin and flesh melted in the high temperature of the flame, he didn't care at all. He endured the flame and came in front of Uchiha Shinichi, and his right hand even touched Uchiha Shinichi's eyeball. Bang! Just at the moment when Orochimaru was dazzling, Uchiha Shinichi's body turned into white smoke. Orochimaru was stunned, and said in surprise, "Shadow clone." From the beginning of the idea of dazzling the eye, Orochimaru has been paying close attention to Uchiha Shinichi. He can be sure that Uchiha Shinichi did not have the time to release the shadow clone. So the only possibility is that the Uchiha Shinichi in front of him has always been a shadow clone. The first to react was Uchiha Shinichi's partner, Pippa Juzo. He was the closest to Orochimaru, and he waved his beheading sword at Orochimaru and asked, "Orochimaru, how dare you betray the organization?" Kakuzu glanced at Orochimaru and Pippa Juzo, and then looked at Hyojin, who had not escaped far, and said, "You guys solve your own problems. I'm going to chase after that guy." With that, Kakuzu and the 4 masked monsters randomly chose a Hyojin and chased after him. Sasori stared deeply at Orochimaru, and without saying anything, he controlled the ice puppet and chased after the other Hyojin. Since they can't distinguish which is the real body and which is the water clone, Kakuzu and Sasori can only chase after them separately. Hyojin, who was breaking out of the encirclement, looked back and immediately raised the corner of his mouth. Uchiha Shinichi obviously did not forget his previous instructions, so he was wary of the members of the Akatsuki, so Orochimaru's seemingly sudden attack was not unexpected at all, and his plan to provoke the Akatsuki to fight among themselves was unexpectedly effective. The situation that was originally 1 against 5 has now become 1 against 1. Looking at Sasori, who was chasing behind him, Hyojin began to calculate the next countermeasures. At the moment, the chakra in his body is less than 10%, and a large amount of nature's chakra has accumulated in his body, so he can't continue to use the Ryumyaka chakra. Otherwise, his body will have an irreversible petrification phenomenon, so it's really a bit difficult for him to fight with Sasori at this moment. What's more, Sasori's strength is not below Kakuzu's, and with the ice puppet, it can even be said that he is the nemesis of Suijin, and before he comprehends ice release, he has no chance of winning against Sasori. Sasori said with a playful look on his face, "You can't escape." Hyojin ignored him and continued to run. At this time, under the control of Sasori, the ice puppet suddenly displayed an ice release ninjutsu. In an instant, a smooth and clear ice track appeared on the ground, and this ice track quickly extended towards Hyojin, chasing after Hyojin as if it has a mind of its own. Sasori and the ice puppet glided quickly on the ice track. Their speed was far faster than Hyojin, who was running on 2 legs. If the speed of both sides doesn't change, then it's only a matter of time before Sasori catches up with Hyojin. Chapter 162. Looking at the Sasori and the ice puppet sliding on the ice track, Suejin's face sank. He stopped and jumped onto a tree. Sasori also stopped and said with a smile, "If I kill you here, no one will know." Sasori didn't take Pain's order to capture him seriously, because he doesn't think that the so-called Amitsukami that Hyojin mentioned can threaten the Akatsuki. In his opinion, instead of spending a lot of effort to capture him alive, it's better to kill him and turn him into a puppet. Under the mask, Hyojin slowly activated the Byakugan. After confirming that no other members of the Akatsuki were chasing him, he breathed a sigh of relief while secretly thinking about countermeasures. Sasori didn't give Hyojin a chance to breathe. He immediately raised his hands that were connected to the chakra and shouted, "Ice release. 1,000 killing ice." Instantly, the ice puppet clenched its hands. Under the effect of the ice chakra, the water vapor in the air gradually condensed and turned into thousands of ice pillars that were suspended in the air and pointed at Hyojin. Hyojin's face suddenly stiffened. With the inside of his Byakugan, in just a moment, he judged that the thousands of ice pillars that were suspended in the air had blocked all his escape routes, forcing him into a dead end. "TSK, it seems that I can escape." He thought that after provoking the Akatsuki's internal strife, he would be able to escape smoothly, but he didn't think that after Sasori obtained the ice puppet, his mobility would increase so much. "It seems that I have underestimated the Akatsuki." Secretly sighing, Hyojin concentrated his mind and focused on dealing with Sasori. Sasori coldly said, "You still haven't lost your fighting spirit? But it's a pity that you met me." After saying that, Sasori waved his hand. The countless ice pillars that were suspended in the air were mixed with a whistling sound as they shot toward Hyojin on the tree. Water escape, water ripple. Almost at the same time as Scorpion made his move, Hyojin also completed his hand seals, spitting out a slender water blade from his mouth, cutting off the big tree next to him, and then turned around and kicked the broken half of the trunk toward Scorpion. At the same time, he shrank his body and hid behind the half of the tree trunk that flew towards the Scorpion. Swish, 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 countless thousand ice blades rained down on the tree trunk, causing its splinters to fly everywhere. Hyojin, who was hiding behind the tree, was not spared either. In an instant, he was hit by dozens of ice swords, and blood splattered everywhere. However, the tiny ice was powerless to stop it from flying towards Scorpion's tree trunk. Boom! With a roar, the tree trunk smashed into the place where Scorpion had just been. Hyojin, who was hiding behind the tree trunk, fiercely stepped on the tree trunk. With the recoil, he leaped up and appeared in front of the retreating Scorpion. At this time, Scorpion, who was in midair, had a playful look on his face, and he gently waved his hands that were connected to the chakra line. "Ice release. Ice binding coffin." The ice puppet controlled by him immediately pointed at Hyojin, who was rushing towards Scorpion. In an instant, a stream of water wrapped around Hyojin's right arm, and in an instant, it turned into cold ice. Hyojin didn't even turn his head, and without looking, he waved the kunai in his hand to cut off his right arm that was bound by the ice release ninjutsu, and then rushed toward Scorpion. Hyojin's movement was too fast, as if he had already decided to abandon his right arm before Scorpion made his move. So before Scorpion could react, he had already rushed in front of Scorpion, and the kunai in his hand smoothly pierced into Scorpion's chest. Scorpion barely blocked it with his body technique, and then kicked Hyojin hard and flew back again with a recoil. The two people who were separated in the air were not idle. Hyojin bit his finger, made a seal with one hand, and shouted with difficulty, "Psychic art!" Bang! After a burst of white smoke, a strong wild boar appeared in the forest. Hyojin, with a broken arm, landed firmly on the wild boar and shouted, "Run!" The wild boar, with a big striped tiger in its mouth, was stunned. Obviously, it was the first time it was psychic, and it was not used to it, but after receiving Hyojin's order, it immediately moved its hooves and ran wildly. On Scorpion's side, he looked at the kunai that was pierced into his chest and even the series of detonation talismans that were hissing behind the kunai, he also decisively shook a scroll. Bang! In the white smoke, a puppet that looked like a scorpion with a long tail appeared. This puppet was the defensive puppet Fei Liuhu made by Scorpion himself. The moment he landed, Scorpion rolled sideways and hid in the Fei Liuhu. Boom, boom, boom. Almost at the same time Scorpion hid in the Fei Liuhu, the detonation talisman that he pulled off exploded outside the Fei Liuhu. After a while, Scorpion crawled out of the Fei Liuhu. He glanced at the slightly damaged Fei Liuhu, and his face was gloomy. Without a doubt, even a defensive puppet could not completely withstand the explosion of the detonation talismans at such a close distance. Not to mention that there was more than one detonation talisman. Then, Scorpion looked around. At this time, Hyojin had already escaped to God knows where on the battlefield. Only Hyojin's frozen broken arm was left. Walking to the broken arm with a gloomy face, Scorpion controlled the ice puppet to remove the ice release ninjutsu and picked up the broken arm. At this time, a familiar hissing sound came into his ears. He subconsciously used his fingers to pick up the sleeve of the broken arm and found that the sleeve was full of detonation talismans. This, on Hyojin's side. Hyojin laid weakly on the back of the wild boar, and after a while, he took out a bandage from his ninja bag and simply treated the wound on his right shoulder. Then, he sat up and looked back to make sure that the enemy had not caught up. Seeing that Scorpion did not catch up, he breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, he noticed that the wild boar still had the dead tiger in its mouth, so he patted the boar's head and said, "Eat, eat, eat, eat. All you know is to eat. We are running for our lives. Can't you first throw away the dead tiger in your mouth?" The wild boar grunted, as if complaining to Hyojin that it had spent a lot of effort to catch this tiger. Hyojin knocked on its head again. "Quickly throw it away. Escape is more important." The wild boar grunted a few more times. Then it opened its mouth wide and swallowed the dead tiger in its mouth. Then it ran unsteadily with its big belly propped up. Hyojin was speechless. "You dead pig, still thinking about eating when you are about to die." Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a series of explosions came from behind. Calculating the time, Hyojin knew that this was the trap he left behind, activated. Chapter 163. Swoosh, 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 accompanied by the sound of wind breaking. 3 figures landed in the messy forest. All 3 of them were dressed as my ninjas. The leader of the team was carrying a ceramic jar on his back and wore a pair of sunglasses, looking calm and collected. The 2 members were a boy and a girl, both of them only 14 or 15 years old, looking slightly immature. After looking around, the boy with the long sword on his back murmured to himself in disbelief, Did ninja war break out here?" The girl wearing Konoha's forehead protector on the side was also shocked. In front of them, the huge forest was filled with the remains of the battlefield. Even a casual glance could easily find the traces left by the 5-element ninjutsu. Water release, fire release, wind release, lightning release, and earth release. Usually, a battlefield of this scale would only appear in a large-scale ninja war. The leader of the team said in a deep voice, "Red Bean, Gale, go look around and see if you can find any useful clues." Yes, Red Bean and Gale immediately dispersed. After a while, Red Bean, who was searching for clues, stopped in front of a big tree. Looking at the snake's body on the ground, Red Bean squatted down in shock. After a brief examination of the snake's body, her expression suddenly changed, and she said in shock, "This is Orochimaru's snake. Could it be that Orochimaru was also involved in this battle?" After the few of them gathered again, Red Bean immediately reported to the leader of the team, "Captain Ji Wei, I found this. This is Orochimaru's snake. He should be involved in the battle here." After taking the snake body and examining it, the leader named Ji Wei frowned. From the information received from the black market, the people fighting here should be 2 groups of bounty ninjas. Why would Orochimaru be involved in this kind of battle? Ahem. After coughing twice, Gale, who did not look too well, said, "This is a large-scale battlefield. If two groups of bounty ninjas are fighting each other, there must be more than 100 people on both sides. Jiwei nodded, agreeing with Gale's guess. After all, an ordinary bounty ninja is generally only at the level of a chunin, and 2 or 3 of them can't make such a big movement. So, according to the analysis of the battlefield, the number of people who participated in the battle is at least more than 100. Jiwei sniffed and said, "There's not much of a bloody smell in the air, which means that the winning side not only cleaned up the battlefield strictly, but also disguised themselves accordingly." But why'd he do that? What are they trying to hide? Red Bean asked, "Captain, what do we do now?" After pondering for a moment, Jiwei replied, "These bounty ninjas are too abnormal, and they even involve Orochimaru. We must report the situation here to Naruto-sama as soon as possible." In the dark cave, under the summoning of the magic lantern body technique, all the Akatsuki members who participated in the capture of Suijin appeared on the finger of the giant stone statue. Pain looked around and said in a deep voice, "Why did we fail the mission?" Shinichi Uchiha spread his hands and said, "You can't blame us for this. If you want to blame someone, blame Orochimaru." Bipa Juzo nodded gently. Orochimaru betrayed us. During the mission, he suddenly attacked Shinichi, trying to seize Shinichi's Sharingan, which disrupted our encirclement. Sasori snorted lightly. "I told you long ago that we shouldn't have recruited him into the organization." Pain was silent when he heard this. He naturally knew that Orochimaru's purpose in joining the organization was not pure, but he thought that with his own strength he could deter Orochimaru, but he didn't expect that Orochimaru would choose to betray the organization so quickly. After a while, Pain asked, "Has the identity of the other party been confirmed?" Kakuzu, who has been silent all this time, replied, "It's a guy named Suijin. According to him, the organization he belongs to is called Kamikaze, and the previous Yama is the leader of their organization." Kamikaze. Pain chewed on this word, and his face gradually became gloomy. In his mind, the only one who can change the world of shinobi is him. The only one worthy of the title of Kamikaze is him, who has the sage eye. Shinichi Uchiha crossed his arms and said with a smile, "Hey, that Suijin is not simple. Our 3 teams attacked together, but in the end, one died, one defected, and we didn't even catch him. This time we lost a lot of face." Shinichi Uchiha was very happy about the defeat of the organization. Because they are all elite renegade shinobi, the members of Akatsuki have always been arrogant. Except for the 5 great shinobi villages, they basically don't put other forces in their eyes. And this time, the organization sent a total of 3 teams with 6 members. With an absolute advantage of 6 against 1, not only did they fail to capture the target alive, but they also lost 1 person and 1 defected. It can be said that this is the biggest loss Akatsuki has suffered since Pain came to power. Recovering from his thoughts, Pain asked indifferently, "How strong is that Suijin?" Kakuzu said, "Very strong. One-on-one, I don't have the confidence to capture him alive." After Kakuzu finished speaking, everyone turned their eyes to Sasori. After all, among the few people present, only Kakuzu and Sasori have really fought with Suijin. Sasori snorted lightly. "The next time I meet him, I will kill him with my own hands." In a situation where victory was within his grasp, not only did he let Suijin escape, but he also suffered a small loss. This made Sasori, who has always been competitive, very annoyed. Pain thought for a moment and said, "Sasori, Kakuzu, you 2 form a team for the time being." Kakuzu and Sasori looked at each other, tacitly agreeing to Pain's arrangement. After all, in Akatsuki, there are always 2 people in a team, and both of them have lost their partners, so it is reasonable for them to form a team for the time being. Pain then said, "Next time you find clues about Amatsukami, don't act rashly. Gather at least 2 teams before you act." Sasori said at this time, "I suspect that Orochimaru has something to do with Amatsukami, and the timing of his betrayal is too coincidental." Pain thought for a moment and said, "Then the task of hunting down Orochimaru will be handed over to you and Kakuzu." Sasori said confidently, "No problem." Pain looked at the members one last time and said, "Dismiss." After exiting the magic lamb body, Pain came to the edge of the tower, drenched in the drizzle, looking into the distance. The sudden appearance of Amatsukomi gave him a bad feeling, but he still believes that with his own strength, he is enough to control everything. At this time, a twisting vortex appeared behind him, and a figure wearing a mask walked out of the vortex. This person is not a bystander, but Obsidian, nicknamed Madara Uchiha. Chapter 164. Hearing that the mission had failed, Obsidian asked in disappointment, "You didn't even manage to find out who they are? There's no trace of Yama, and the capture of Master Suijin has failed. The only thing we know is that they are members of an organization called Amatsukomi, and Yama seems to be the leader of that organization." Amatsukomi. Obsidian's gaze turned cold as he thought to himself, "Who was the person I met at the root base? Why do I feel like he's familiar?" Pain then said, "Orochimaru has betrayed us." Obsidian was not too surprised by this. He pondered for a moment and said, "Looks like we'll need more manpower." Pain looked into the distance and said calmly, "Don't worry. No one can stop me." Inside Hyojin's secret laboratory. After dragging his broken body back to the laboratory, Hyojin immediately withdrew his soul and returned to his escape body. TSK, the injuries are so severe. He rubbed his chin and sighed. When he was running for his life, he did not notice it. But now that he had returned to his original body and was observing the clone A on the experimental platform from a different angle, he realized that the damage to the clone A body was actually this severe. The right arm is completely missing. The muscles on the back were cut by Bing Chimbin. The meridians on both sides of the ribs were also damaged by Bing Chimbin. Hyojin used his Tenseigan to observe the injuries on the clone A's body while making detailed records. At first, he thought that the loss of the right arm was the most severe injury, but after a careful examination, he realized that Bing Qianbin had caused quite a lot of damage to the clone A's body as well. To a certain extent, the severity of the injury was even greater than the loss of the right arm. This was because Bing Qianbin had not only cut a large number of muscles and ligaments on the clone A's body, but it had also damaged many important meridians and acupuncture points. The destructive power of the ice release ninjutsu on the body is much higher than I thought. These injuries were not eye-catching individually, but when combined together, it was terrifying. It could cause a person to lose the ability to fight without them realizing it. After calculating all the data, Hyojin removed all the items from the Type A clone and destroyed the Type A clone that had lost its function. This encounter with the Akatsuki has made Kuroto understand a certain truth. Simple water release is not enough to deal with an enemy of Akatsuki's level. If he wants to ensure the safety of the clone, then he must at least master the ice release. At this time, Hyojin shifted his gaze to the clone B in the nutrition tank. After taking out the clone B from the nutrition tank, Hyojin didn't hesitate and immediately used the Tenseigan's soul descending technique to descend his soul onto the clone B. After adapting for a while, Hyojin realized that in terms of data, the Type B clone was very close to the Type A clone. However, in actual control, there was an obvious difference between the two. Among them, the most obvious point was that the water attribute of the Type A clone was much stronger than the wind attribute of the Type A clone. As a result, the Type A clone did not have enough affinity with the wind attribute chakra. On the other hand, the Type B clone's water attribute and wind attribute are more compatible. Although this will make the power of the water release ninjutsu of the Type B clone significantly weaker than that of the Type A clone, but at the same time, the probability of awakening ice release in the Type B clone is higher than that of the Type A clone. Whether it is the Type A clone or the Type B clone, both are products of the fusion of Haku's cells. Therefore, in theory, both of these clones have the possibility of inheriting Haku's ice release Kekkei Genkai. After all, the ice release is only the fusion of the water and wind attributes, not Byakugan Sharingan, which requires mental power and involves the soul, in release Kekkei limit. After a while, Hyojin, who was controlling the clone B clone, arrived at Haku's underground residence. After taking Haku to a remote forest, Hyojin immediately ordered him, "Show me the ice release ninjutsu here." Haku nodded, "Yes." After saying that, he gently stretched out his right hand with his palm facing upwards. In an instant, an ice flower appeared on his palm. Hyojin, who had activated Byakugan, asked, "What is your limit without hand seals?" Haku closed his eyes and concentrated for a while. Then the ice flower on his palm condensed into an ice senbon. Hyojin quickly took out a small notebook and recorded the flow of chakra in Haku's meridians. In Byakugan's vision, when Haku used ice release, the fusion ratio of water and wind chakra in Haku's meridians is about 8:2. Among them, the water attribute chakra is mainly responsible for shaping the ninjutsu, while the wind attribute chakra seems to only be used for the fusion of nature. After recording, Hyojin then said, "Okay, now show me the ice release ninjutsu." Haku carefully asked, "Kuroto-sama, what kind of ninjutsu do you want me to use?" After thinking about it, Hyojin said, "The strongest." Haku took a deep breath, then slowly printed and shouted, "Ice release, magic mirror, ice crystal." In an instant, a smooth and translucent ice mirror appeared out of thin air, forming a huge ice shield, enclosing both Haku and Hyojin in the open space inside the ice shield. Looking at the surrounding ice mirrors, Hyojin curiously asked, "Haku, can you control these ice mirrors that are suspended in the air?" "Yes." Haku nodded, and with a light leap, he integrated into the ice mirror. Then, the motionless ice mirrors suddenly began to spin. At first glance, it seemed as though the entire ice shield was spinning. Hyojin was surprised to find that even if he activated Byakugan, he still couldn't find Haku's real body in the rapidly rotating ice mirrors. At this time, Haku stopped the rotation of the ice mirror, and half of his body poked out from one of the ice mirrors, panting, and asked, "Kuroto-sama, what else do you need me to do?" Hyojin shook his head, then carefully recorded the movement of chakra in his body when Haku used a magic mirror ice crystal, and finally slowly put away the notebook. In front of Haku's puzzled eyes, Hyojin, who put away the notebook, imitated the sequence of hand seals that he used to cast the magic mirror ice crystal, and then slowly made the hand seals. Haku was shocked. "You also know ice release?" Hyojin did not answer, but focused on controlling the movement of the water attribute chakra in his body. As soon as Hyojin finished the hand seals, in an instant, a water curtain appeared around him. The transformation is complete. Glancing at the water curtain that was very close to Haku's ice mirror, Hyojin began to try to integrate the wind attribute into it. Walala. Chapter 165. Looking at the water splashes on the ground, Hyojin showed a thoughtful look. In the demonstration just now, he copied Haku's chakra meridian path, whether it was the chakra's amount or the ratio of water and wind attribute chakra, but the result was very different. Kekkei Genkai is really not simple. There is no doubt that ice release is not as simple as merging wind attribute chakra into water attribute chakra. The key is not only the chakra path and ratio, but also the perfect fusion of water attribute and wind attribute chakra, the two different attributes of water attribute and wind attribute chakra. Haku was still young, so it was difficult for him to maintain a large-scale ice release ninjutsu like magic mirror ice crystal for a long time. So after a while, he gently landed beside Hyojin. But seeing that Hyojin seemed to be thinking about something, he didn't dare to disturb him, so he obediently stood at the side. After thinking for a while, Hyojin turned to Haku and asked, "When you used ice release ninjutsu, did you feel anything special?" "Nothing." Haku was confused, and he didn't quite understand what Hyojin meant. Hyojin changed the way he asked, "Try to remember the difference between using ice release ninjutsu and water release ninjutsu." After thinking about it seriously, Haku replied, "There are some differences," but Hyojin hurriedly asked, "But what?" Not knowing how to answer, Haku panicked. "It's just that I don't know what the difference is. Patting Haku on the shoulder, Hyojin slowed down his tone. Don't worry. Think about it slowly and tell me slowly. After thinking about it carefully, Haku slowly said, I think the biggest difference is that when using water-release ninjutsu, you only need to make hand seals, but when using ice-release ninjutsu, not only do you need to make hand seals, but you also can't be distracted. After saying that, Haku looked at Hyojin carefully, afraid that Hyojin would not be satisfied with his answer. Hyojin, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes slightly. Is it concentration? The young Haku was unable to accurately sum up the differences between ice-release and water-release ninjutsu, but with his excellent talent, he grasped some of the key points. After pondering for a while with his hand supporting his chin, Hyojin had a bold idea all of a sudden. He brought Bai to the forest of death. Afterward, Hyojin sat cross-legged on the ground and said to Haku, Haku, I'll cast a spell on you later. Relax and don't resist. Bai answered, yes. Hyojin then extracted his soul from Clone B and returned to his evasion body in a laboratory not far away. Seeing that Hyojin suddenly lowered his head and lost consciousness, Haku was taken aback. However, thinking of Hyojin's previous instructions, Haku did not dare to move or think too much. Instead, he calmed his mind and stood on the spot, waiting for Hyojin to cast the technique. A moment later, Suijin controlled the primordial body to rush over. After the soul descent technique of the Tenseigan is used to extract the soul will instantly return to the body of the release. Therefore, Kuroto brought Haku to the Death Forest, which was close to the laboratory, so that he could quickly return to the scene. Hiding behind a big tree, Hyojin stared at Haku, who was looking around, and slowly activated the Tenseigan. After a while, he once again activated the Tenseigan's soul descent technique. However, this time, the target was not the clone bee sitting cross-legged in front of Haku, but Haku's body. Whoosh! Like a breeze, Haku suddenly felt very sleepy. At this time, Hyojin's voice came from the bottom of his heart. Haku, concentrate and immediately use the ice-release ninjutsu. Haku was shocked, and his sleepiness suddenly disappeared like a tide. He looked around in surprise and asked in a low voice, Kuroto-sama, were you talking to me just now? It's me, don't? Aluminum play? Enron tribute. Hotera Hyojin urged Haku eagerly. It seems that he can't maintain this soul descent state for a long time. This is the biggest difference between the Tenseigan's soul descent technique and Orochimaru's undead reincarnation. Orochimaru's undead reincarnation is to condense all of his essence before abandoning his body, and then put it into other people's body. Not only will he plunder the other party's body, but he will also devour the other party's soul. After using undead reincarnation many times, Orochimaru devoured too many other people's souls, causing his own soul to become more and more heterogeneous, and his spiritual power to become weaker and weaker, so he was easily restrained by Itachi's Jinjutsu. Tenseigan's soul descent technique is different. It just moves the soul to another place, and it doesn't involve plundering and devouring. Therefore, when Hyojin uses soul descent technique on Haku, he can't take Haku's body or devour Haku's soul. His soul can only barely attach to Haku's soul, like a guest temporarily living in Haku's body. There is no doubt that this is a huge burden for Haku. Similarly, this is also a burden for Hyojin, so he can't maintain this soul descent state for a long time. Otherwise, not only will it damage Haku's soul, but it will also cause irreparable damage to his own soul. Under Hyojin's urging, Haku also ignored the abnormality of his body and quickly used ice-release ninjutsu. Mobilizing chakra, hand seals. Haku's hand seals were practiced, and his casting rhythm was smooth, almost in one breath. Ice release, magic mirror, ice crystal. Whoosh! Other than the gentle breeze, there was no change in the surroundings. Not to mention the large-scale ice release ninjutsu. There wasn't even a bit of mist or cold air. Haku was stunned. Hyojin, who was attached to Haku's body, was also confused. What's going on? Listening to Hyojin's anxious tone, Haku stuttered, I don't know what's going on, just now. After pondering for a while, Hyojin said, don't use magic mirror ice crystal. Choose a simple ice release ninjutsu to try. Haku once again made a hand seal and shouted, ice release, ice mirror technique. This time, ice release didn't fail, and a bright and clear ice mirror instantly appeared in front of Haku. As his soul was attached to Haku's body, the whole process of Haku using ice mirror technique was clear to Hyojin. It felt like he was personally using ice release. This kind of experience of using ice release was undoubtedly the best teaching. After withdrawing his soul and returning to his body, Hyojin settled Haku down and brought the clone bee back to the secret laboratory. Chapter 166. Prior to this, Hyojin has always had a misconception about the ice release. He thought that when using ice release, the water attribute chakra is only responsible for the early ninjutsu shaping, while the wind attribute chakra is responsible for the final ninjutsu fusion. However, it turns out that this view is wrong. If you want to use ice release in its true sense, then from the very beginning, you must fuse the water attribute chakra and the wind attribute chakra together to complete the nature fusion. What hand seals, ninjutsu shaping, chakra movement trajectory, etc. are all done after the nature fusion is completed. Because of this, Haku said that the difference between using ice release and water release ninjutsu is that when using ice release, one cannot be distracted and needs to be fully focused. This sentence actually tells Tenseigan that the fusion of nature is something that happens throughout the entire process, not just at a certain stage. Therefore, if the water attribute chakra and the wind attribute chakra cannot be fused, then no matter how many hand seals are copied, the trajectory of chakra movement, etc., you will not be able to use ice release in its true sense. After understanding this, Hyojin knows how to practice ice release. For him, mastering ice release is only a matter of time. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 months have passed. In these 3 months, the negotiations between Mai and Kyumo have made significant progress. According to the final results of the negotiations, Kyumo will send a delegation to Mai in the near future to formally sign a peace agreement with Mai. On this day, 3 generations convened Umbu Team 11 in Naruto's office. After handing a document to Team 11 Captain Kakashi, 3 generations said in a deep voice, "This is the route map of Kyumo's negotiation mission. Your Team 11 is responsible for protecting the mission along the way. You must not let anything happen to Kyumo's delegation in the Land of Fire." Kakashi immediately realized the importance of the task, carefully looked at the document in his hand, and asked, "Naruto-sama, does anyone else know the route of the Kyumo envoys?" 3 generations removed the pipe from his mouth. There are no more than 4 people in the village who know about this top-secret document, and they're all completely reliable, so you don't have to worry about the information being leaked. Kakashi carefully put away the map of the Kyumo envoys and said, "Please rest assured, Class 11 will ensure that the Kyumo envoys arrive at the village safely." After leaving the Naruto building, Kakashi said to his classmates, "This mission is very important. Everyone get ready. We will depart in 30 minutes. The students of Class 11 nodded and went back to their homes to prepare. Currently, Hyojin was controlling the clone bee type. In the past few months, Kuroto has been using the clone bee type almost all the time, on the one hand, to improve the compatibility between his soul and the clone bee type, and on the other hand, to further develop the clone bee type. However, this mission is far away from the village, and there's no guarantee that there won't be any accidents. So after weighing the pros and cons, Kuroto decided to change back to the Een release body to carry out this mission. All the students of Class 11 are swift and decisive ninjas, so it didn't take long for them to prepare and set off. After 2 weeks of trekking, Class 11 arrived at the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Hot Water one day ahead of schedule. Standing on a steep cliff, Kakashi pointed to a path in the distance. If there is no accident, the Kyumo envoys will enter the Land of Fire from that path tomorrow. Hyojin activated the Byakugan, carefully observed for a while, and immediately said, "There is no problem on that path." At this time, Guy asked, "Are we going to meet the Kumo envoys here, or are we going to protect them in secret?" Kakashi shook his head. "We only need to be responsible for their safety. We don't need to meet them, let alone let them know of our existence." Soon night fell. Class 11 found a small hidden cave and used it as a temporary camp. After eating some dry food in front of the campfire, the board group chatted. Kakashi casually said, "Have you heard? Recently, there was a large-scale conflict between two groups of bounty ninjas in the territory of the Land of Fire. It seems that even the black market was affected." Jishui also took over the topic. "Well, I also heard about it. These bounty ninjas are getting more and more excessive, daring to start a war in the territory of the Land of Fire. In order to find a defected Uchiha Shinichi, the Uchiha clan has increased the amount of intelligence collected from the outside world, and as the strongest person in the Uchiha clan who possesses the Manjikyu Sharingan, Jishui has naturally heard all kinds of news." Guy asked, "Will we encounter any bounty ninjas in this mission?" Kakashi's face sank, but he didn't say anything. Jishui was also silent. With the decline of the village, Mai's control over the Land of Fire has reached an unprecedented low. Now, even a little bit away from the village is no longer safe, so both Kakashi and Jishui are very worried that there will be an accident during this mission. After all, the confrontation with Kumo has involved too much manpower and material resources of the village, making the village a little overwhelmed. So if the peace agreement can't be signed smoothly because of an accident with the Kumo envoys, then Class 11 will have to bear a lot of responsibility. On the side, Hyojin was also a little worried at this moment. Although the Kumo envoys successfully arrived at Mai in the original space-time, this doesn't mean that the Kumo envoys in this space-time will also be able to reach Mai smoothly. One must know that because of Hyojin, the deviation between this space-time and the original space-time is getting bigger and bigger. What will happen in the next second, even Hyojin, who has the memories of his previous life, can't say for sure. However, there has been no news from Uchiha and Shinichi, which at least shows that the Akatsuki organization is not interested in the Kumo envoys. Early the next morning, Class 11 was stationed on the cliff, looking at the border. It wasn't until the sun was hanging high in the sky that there was some movement on the border, and a team of 12 people slowly entered the field of vision of the 4 people of Class 11. Hyojin used to be a Kugin to carefully observe, and after confirming that the other party was dressed like Kumo ninjas, he said to his companions, "It seems that all of them are Kumo ninjas. They should be the team of the Kumo envoys." After saying that, Hyojin suddenly frowned. Noticing the change in Hyojin's expression, Jishui asked, "What's wrong, Kuroto-san?" Hyojin murmured, "It's a bit strange." Kakashi hurriedly asked, "What did you find?" Chapter 167. Listening to Hyojin's doubts, Kakashi and others frowned. In history, although the second Naruto went to the Cloud Village to sign the peace agreement, but the Cloud Village's Golden Horn and Silver Horn brothers launched a coup, leading to the death of the second Lei Ing and the second Naruto in the coup. But in any case, signing the peace agreement is a major event for the two countries. Even if the 4 generations Lei Ing doesn't personally come forward, the Cloud Village should at least send a strong elite Jonin to act as the leader of the envoy to Mai. Guy said straightforwardly, "It seems that the Cloud Village doesn't trust us very much." Kakashi nodded. Cloud Village's arrangement is obviously worried that the elite shinobi sent will be trapped in my village, and from this point, it can be seen that the Cloud Village doesn't trust the Mai shinobi. Jishui sighed. "I wonder how much sincerity they have in coming to sign the peace agreement this time." Listening to Jishui's words, Hyojin's expression gradually became solemn. In the original story, it was the leader of the Cloud Village's envoy who, after arriving in Mai and signing the peace agreement, took the opportunity to sneak into the Hyuga mansion and try to kidnap the eldest daughter of the Hyuga family, Hinata. Hyuga family head Hyuga Hayashi soon discovered the uninvited guest and killed him with a single palm strike. This sudden incident caused a series of diplomatic disputes between the Mai family and the Cloud Village, which had just signed the peace agreement. Cloud Village used the death of a diplomat in my village as an excuse to attack my village, and threatened my village with war, forcing the Hyuga family head Hyuga Hayashi to hand over the Hyuga family head, who killed the head of the Cloud Village. Under the threat of the Cloud Village, I finally chose to be patient and, at the cost of Hyuga Hayashi's brother Richa Hyuga Hayashi, appeased the anger of the Cloud Village and avoided a war. Recalling this memory, Hyojin felt that something was wrong. If Kumo chose peace, then the Kumo envoys shouldn't have kidnapped Hinata. It is obviously not a reasonable choice to destroy the hard-won peace between the two countries for a pair of Byakugan. What's more, the probability of kidnapping the daughter of the Hyuga clan in my village and successfully escaping back to Cloud Village is not high. Taking such a huge risk with such a low probability of return, logically speaking, normal people would not do such a thing. But it can be said that Kumo Village has no intention of peace at all. The signing of the peace agreement is just a cover. The purpose is to sneak into my city and kidnap Miss Hyuga. Cloud Village shouldn't have signed the peace agreement, let alone chose to settle the dispute after receiving Richa Hyuga's body, maintaining the fragile peace. Perhaps there are internal disputes within Cloud Village. Puzzled, Hyojin could only conclude that there are two factions within Cloud Village, pro-war and pro-peace, which is why the Kumo envoys behaved in such a contradictory manner. Contrary to the expectations of Team 11, the escort mission went surprisingly smoothly. A few weeks later, the Kumo envoys successfully arrived at my village. And when the Kumo envoys arrived, the village organized a grand welcome ceremony, and many villagers spontaneously took to the streets to express their friendship to the Kumo envoys. Everyone may hate the Kumo village, but they don't hate peace. The Third Shinobi War caused too much blood to flow in the village. Take Hyojin's generation as an example. Most of the villagers died in the war. Therefore, even if the dispute was provoked by Kumo village, the villagers still expressed their friendship to the Kumo envoys, because everyone really didn't want to continue the war. After completing the escort mission, Team 11 received a short vacation as a reward from the three generations. After returning home, Hyojin pondered for a while, immediately changed into a set of casual clothes, and leisurely strolled towards the Hyuga clan. Along the way, Kuroto greeted both familiar and unfamiliar people of the Hyuga clan and finally arrived at Hyuga Hizashi's residence. As the younger brother of the patriarch and one of the few elite jonin in the clan, Hyojin Richa's residence is much larger and more imposing than Hyojin's courtyard. After knocking on the door, Kuroto realized that he had forgotten to bring a gift since it was the first time he came to visit her. At this time, a 3 or 4-year-old boy opened the door a crack, poked his little head out, looked at Hyojin and asked, "Oki-san, are you looking for my father?" Without waiting for Hyojin to answer, the door was completely opened, and Hyojin Richa, who was standing behind the door, smiled and said, "Kuroto-kun, come in." After taking a seat, Hyojin looked at the little boy who was sitting next to Hyojin Richa and asked, "Is he Ningtsi?" Richa, with his arms crossed, smiled and nodded. Little Ningtsi saluted Hyojin and said, "Kuroto-kun, I am Ningtsi." Hyojin carefully looked at Ningtsi, and finally his eyes fell on Ningtsi's white and smooth forehead. There is no doubt that the current Ningtsi has not been engraved with the mark of a caged bird. After noticing Hyojin's gaze, Hyojin Richa's expression instantly became gloomy. Because according to the rules since ancient times, when the heir of the main family is 3 years old, the branch family members of the same generation will be engraved with the mark of a caged bird. And the heir of the main family of this generation, that is, Hyojin Hinata, will be 3 years old in a month. In other words, 1 month later, Ningtsi will be engraved with the mark of a caged bird. Stroking the mark of a caged bird on his forehead, Hyojin Richa asked in a low voice, "Kuroto-kun, do you hate it?" Hyojin did not answer and chose to remain silent. Hyojin knows very well that the caged bird has always been a sore point for Hyojin Richa. Once the caged bird is mentioned, Hyojin Richa will be depressed. But to be honest, Hyojin's attitude towards the caged bird is very neutral. In his opinion, The existence of the caged bird has both advantages and disadvantages for the branch family. After all, not every member of the branch family has the strength of Hygein Richa. If there is no caged bird, many members of the branch family with mediocre aptitude will live in anxiety. So in short, the geniuses of the branch family resent the caged bird that can control their lives, and the mediocre members of the branch family are grateful for the protection of the caged bird that saves them from the bad luck of having their eyes gouged out. Unfortunately, Hygein is also one of the mediocre members. During the Third Shinobi War, he deliberately exposed the caged bird seal on his forehead more than once to avoid the enemy from coveting his Byakugan. It can be said that the caged bird has saved him several times. At this time, Richa looked at Ningxi and said sadly, "Ningxi's talent is the best among his peers. It's a pity that he was born in the branch family." Seeing Richa so sad, Ningxi hurriedly asked, "Father, what's wrong?" Chapter 168. Hygein agrees with Ningxi's talent. Ningxi belongs to the kind of genius in the true sense. Through his own practice, he comprehended the secret technique of 8 trigram palm, revolving heaven, which is unique to the clan. And in the absence of a suitable mentor, his strength surpassed all his peers, and he also crushed Hyuga Hinata, the heir of the clan. Hygein, who has experienced mediocrity, knows very well that this achievement is not easy. Take himself as an example. Even if he has Byakugan Kekiai, he can only barely maintain the level of the middle to lower level of his peers. When fighting with a genius like Kakashi, even if he can see through the opponent's movements, his body can't keep up with the opponent's movements, and often he will be defeated in 1 or 2 moves. Therefore, those who can crush their peers can be regarded as geniuses. Therefore, Hygein can more or less understand Richa's unwillingness. His son has such excellent talent, but because of his identity as a branch family, he has to be engraved with the mark of caged bird, forever becoming a bird trapped in a cage. Such a fate, no one can accept it calmly. Looking at Richa and his son, Hygein said calmly, "In fact, fate is always in your own hands." Richa looked at Hygein with some surprise, and after a while, said faintly, "As a branch family, we shouldn't talk about this. I was rude." Hygein chuckled and shook his head. Richa asked at this time, "By the way, you came to me this time. Is there something?" After pondering for a while, Hygein said, "The Cloud Village has been coveting our Kekiai limit. This time their envoys came to the village. I think we should strengthen the security near the clan land." Richa immediately smiled and said, "Jean, your worries are unnecessary. The other party is a diplomatic mission that signed the peace agreement. How could they do such a thing?" Hygein also knows that it will be difficult to convince Richa with this excuse, so he said, "To be honest, I have some doubts about the sincerity of Kumo Village this time. I have investigated the information of the members of their delegation. Only 2 of the 12 people in the delegation are Jonin, and the leader of the delegation is a Jonin named Watanabe." Richa also felt that the staffing of the Kumo envoys was somewhat inappropriate. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Well, I will arrange an additional group of people to strengthen the patrol of the clan land." After chatting for a while, Hygein got up and left. On the way home, Hygein pondered how to deal with a possible kidnapping. Now, all the signs indicate that there is indeed something wrong with Cloud Village's mission, so the kidnapping incident in the original space-time is also likely to happen in this space-time. Even if he doesn't consider the interests of the village and only stands on his own side, Hygein doesn't want the village to continue fighting with the Cloud Village. Because once the village and the Cloud Village start a full-scale war, his actions will be greatly restricted, and it is very likely that he will be sent to the battlefield to fight with the Cloud Shinobi. In this way, he won't have time to carry out his experiment plan. What's more, once a war breaks out between Mai and the Cloud Village, the conflict will intensify, and the direction of the shinobi world will be even more difficult to predict. If someone instigates discord, it is likely to cause the 4th Shinobi War. At that time, the 5 great shinobi villages will be even more powerless against the Obsidian and Akatsuki who are hiding in the dark. How should I solve this kidnapping incident? Kuroda thought as he looked at the villagers coming and going around discussing the peace agreement with a happy expression on their faces. In Hyojin's view, the kidnapping incident is actually not difficult to deal with. As long as the Cloud Shinobi who kidnapped Hinata is captured alive, all the problems will naturally be solved. The only problem is that he doesn't know when the Cloud Village will act. In the house where the Kumo envoys are staying, Watanabe stood alone by the pond in the courtyard. While throwing food to the koi in the pond, he asked softly, "Did you get the thing?" A subtle voice sounded in his ears. "It's very dangerous for you to contact me like this." Watanabe stared at the koi fighting for food in the pond and said casually, "Don't worry, I won't dare to provoke us at this time, and there will be no surveillance nearby." The subtle voice paused for a while before asking slowly, "Have you decided?" Watanabe's face was calm. "You don't have to doubt my determination. Then you should know the consequences." After a pause, the subtle voice sounded again. "Whether the plan succeeds or not, you won't be able to go back alive." Watanabe said lightly, "Give me the thing." The surroundings were quiet for a while, and then a scroll quietly fell into the courtyard. Watanabe picked up the scroll and opened it to have a look. At this time, the subtle voice sounded again. "Destroy it immediately after reading it. Don't let it fall into the hands of otherwise my identity is likely to be exposed." Watanabe closed the scroll with a serious face and said with emotion, "You can actually get such a secret. I'm really curious about your identity." The subtle voice was silent for a long time. "I'm just a ghost that hasn't died yet." In the Uchiha mansion, Uchiha Fuyue stood quietly under the cloister, looking into the distance. Suddenly, a figure fell in front of Fuyue and reported, "Patriarch, our people are all blocked by the Umbu." Hearing this, Fuyue's face suddenly sank. After the Kumo envoys entered the Uchiha clan has been trying to contact the Kumo envoys. However, the task of guarding the Kumo envoys is undertaken by the Umbu directly under Naruto, so several clansmen sent by the Uchiha clan to try to contact the Kumo envoys in private, without exception, were all blocked by the Umbu guarding the periphery of the Kumo envoys. The purpose of the Uchiha clan to contact the Kumo envoys is actually very simple. They want to confirm the whereabouts of Shinichi Uchiha. As one of the two Manjikyu Sharingan possessors of the Uchiha clan, the whereabouts of Shinichi Uchiha has always been the greatest concern of the Uchiha clan. In the view of the vast majority of the Uchiha clan, if Shinichi Uchiha, who possesses the Manjikyu Sharingan, can return to the clan, then the hope of the Uchiha clan to seize the power of the village will be greatly enhanced. After a light sigh, Fuyue asked again, "Is there any news about the black market?" The Uchiha clan member who was kneeling in front of Fuyue shook his head. "Since the last news that Shinichi has joined a bounty ninja organization, there's been no new news about the black market." Fuyue ordered, "Continue to try to contact the Kumo clan. It is unlikely that Shinichi will join any bounty ninja organization. This is likely an illusion deliberately created by the Kumo clan." Chapter 169. In the blink of an eye, a month has passed. During this month, the village and the Kumo envoys have conducted 3 large-scale negotiations and finally finalized all the terms and officially held the signing ceremony of the peace agreement. At the same time as the signing ceremony of the peace agreement was held, a large-scale peace celebration was also held in the village. On this day, almost all the villagers took to the streets, enjoying the joy of peace. The streets were crowded, and the whole village was filled with laughter. But the atmosphere in the Hyuga clan, which is part of the Mai clan, was gloomy and depressed. There was no joy at all. Under the leadership of Hyuga Richa, a group of members of the Hyuga clan came to the front of the main house with a solemn face. Looking at his elder brother Hyuga Hayashi, who was standing quietly in front of the main house, and the eldest sister Hyuga Hinata, who was hiding behind Hayashi, Richa said indifferently, "Hinata, San is already 3 years old, congratulations." As the elder brother, Hayashi nodded lightly. At this time, Ningxi whispered to his father Richa, "Father, Hinata, San is so cute." Richa looked at Ningxi with an indescribable, complex look. Ningxi was puzzled. "Father, what's wrong?" Richa turned his head. "No, nothing." Hyojin on the side saw this scene and shook his head gently. Obviously, until now, Richa didn't tell Ningxi everything about the caged bird. It can be seen that deep in his heart, he deeply rejected the coming moment. Hayashi didn't seem to notice Richa's attitude, or maybe he didn't care, still said lightly, "Leave Ningxi to me." Hisashi-sama bowed and said yes. Watching the main family slowly leave with the young Ningxi, Richa's face was gloomy. No matter how much he rejected or resisted it, this moment had finally arrived, and he had no way to stop it from happening. Suddenly, at the corner at the end of the street, a Hyuga clansman sitting in a wheelchair appeared. His face was very old. He looked like he was in his 40s. Looking at this, sighed calmly. Hyojin asked Richa, "Who is he?" Distracted, Richa glanced back and said, "His name is Takagi. He's also a member of the branch family." Green Tree? Hyojin was startled. This name was very unfamiliar to him, and he had almost never heard his clansmen talk about it. Seeing that Hyojin was a little confused, Richa said, "It's normal that you haven't heard of his name. He was locked up in prison and was only recently released." Hyojin asked curiously, "What did he do?" "He failed in his duty." After a pause, Richa said with a lonely expression, "In the Third Shinobi War, he and his younger brother Futaba were the personal guards of the main family. As a result, one of the Byakuga was taken by the enemy on the battlefield. Therefore, his younger brother Futaba was executed for dereliction of duty. Because he lost his legs in the battle, he was not sentenced to death and was imprisoned." Hearing Richa's words, Hyojin immediately remembered that the Kirin did take a Byakuga on the battlefield, but this matter was regarded as a shame by the Hyuga clan, so it was rarely mentioned in the clan, and Hyojin was still young at that time, so he didn't know about these old matters. When Hyojin came back to his senses, Takagi had already disappeared from the corner at the end of the street. In the afternoon, Hayashi left Richa and his son, as well as Hyojin, at the main family's residence. In the practice room, Hayashi was instructing Hinata on the softboxing of the Hyuga clan, while Richa, Ningxi, and Hyojin sat aside and watched quietly. "The pace is too messy. You can't hit the enemy at this speed. Why are you hesitating? You can't have any hesitation when you punch." Hayashi's stern reprimand kept coming from the field. He was like a harsh teacher, pointing out Hinata's shortcomings one by one. The young Hinata could only gasp and whisper in response. Ningxi looked at Hinata, who was working hard on the field, with a faint smile on his face. He liked this shy sister the first time they met. Richa glanced at Ningxi, whose forehead was already bandaged. He sighed and said, "Ningxi, listen carefully. You were born to protect Miss Hinata and the main family. This is your destiny." Ningxi didn't hear the seriousness in Richa's tone. His eyes were still on Hinata. "Yes, father." Ningxi's straightforward answer made Richa feel more guilty. He looked at Hinata with a cold expression. In Richa's eyes, Hinata, as the heir of the main family, couldn't compare with his son Ningxi in any aspect. As for Niji, it was only because of his useless father that he was branded with the curse of caged bird that he would never be able to break free from. On the other hand, Hinata, a mediocre member of the main family, was able to openly enjoy the power of controlling the branch family. At this moment, a huge unwillingness burst out from his heart. Even he didn't realize that under the drive of instinct, the Byakugan in his eye sockets had unconsciously opened. Murderous aura. Almost at the same time, both Hayashi and Hyojin sensed the cold, murderous aura coming from Richa. Hayashi immediately found the source of the murderous aura and shouted at Richa, "Seal!" In an instant, the Byakugan that Richa had opened was sealed, and the caged bird curse on his forehead also flashed with a green light. As the caged bird curse emitted a burst of green light, Richa held his head with both hands and rolled on the ground in pain, wailing. The panicked Ningxi hurriedly rushed up. "Father, what's wrong?" Although he didn't understand what was going on, it didn't prevent Ningxi from feeling the pain his father was suffering. 2 lines of tears immediately flowed down from his eyes. Hyojin, who was on the side, didn't do anything. Instead, he observed this scene calmly. It can be activated instantly without complicated seals. This was the first time Hyojin had seen the caged bird curse being activated. In almost an instant, Hayashi, who had activated the caged bird curse, easily sealed the Byakugan that Richa had opened. In other words, even if the two of them were equal in strength, the branch family had no ability to resist in front of the main family. To be able to make a ninja like Richa let out such a tragic wail, the caged bird really acts directly on the brain nerves. For an elite jonin like Richa, the pain on the skin and flesh was nothing at all. Only the caged bird that acted directly on the brain nerves could make him wail in pain and completely lose the ability to fight. Hayashi stopped the caged bird and said lightly, "Go back. I will forgive you, idiot, but only for today. Don't forget your destiny." Chapter 170. After leaving the ancestral residence, the pale Richa said to Hyojin, "I'm sorry." Hyojin shook his head and said, "It's okay." It was a great harvest for Hyojin to observe the activation of the caged bird curse at such a close distance. The only regret was that he couldn't use Byakugan at the scene. Otherwise, he could have more clearly observed the flow of chakra in the bodies of Hayashi and Richa. After walking for a while, Richa suddenly said, "Kuroto, I want to ask you a favor." "What is it?" Richa pulled Ningxi to his side and said, "I hope you can be Ningxi's mentor." Hyojin smiled and waved his hand and said, "You must be joking." Richa said with a serious face, "I'm serious. Compared to me, you are more suitable to be his mentor." Hyojin asked with interest, "Why?" "No matter how you look at it, it will be better if you personally guide Ningxi." Ningxi looked at his father and then at Hyojin, looking a little overwhelmed. Hizashi-sama gently stroked Niji's head and sighed. "Today's matter made me realize that I am lacking in magnanimity, especially the calmness you showed. It made me feel even more ashamed." Hyojin chuckled and said, "I'm not calm at all." "No." Hizashi stared at Suijin and said in a deep voice, "You can't hide from my eyes, unlike others who hide their fear in the bottom of their heart. Your calmness is not an act, although I don't understand why you are able to face the caged bird so calmly. I am impressed by your magnanimity." Hyojin smiled and didn't explain anything. It has to be said that Richa's intuition is very keen, but there is one thing that Richa is wrong about. Richa obviously overestimated Hyojin's tolerance. The reason why Hyojin is calm is that he has already found a way to bypass the caged bird, so he can be so calm. If he is also under the control of the caged bird, and his life is in the hands of others, his mood will not be much better than Richa. Glancing at Ningxi, Hyojin pondered for a while and said to Richa, "If you don't change your mind in the future, I am willing to be Ningxi's mentor." Richa breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm relieved." After saying goodbye to Richa and his son, Hyojin walked alone and slowly left the Hyuga clan. Although it was near dusk at this time, the village was still very lively. The streets and alleys were full of villagers who had played for a day at the celebration, but still wanted to continue, and the izakaya and barbecue shops were even more noisy. Walking on the brightly lit street, Hyojin sighed in his heart. It seems that everyone is tired of war. At this time, a call came from the window of the second floor of the izakaya in the distance. "Kuroto, here." Hyojin looked up and found that guy was greeting him by the window, and there seemed to be Red Bean and Gale next to him. Hyojin, who was on the street, responded and then came to the second floor of the izakaya. After taking a seat, Suijin discovered that not only Guy, but also Kakashi, Ginma, Ibiki, and Anko were also here, and so were Kuroto, Kakashi, Ginma, and Ibiki. Guy asked, "I've been looking for you all day. Where have you been?" "There are some things in the clan." After a perfunctory sentence, Hyojin asked curiously, "Why are so many people gathered this time? Don't everyone have a mission?" After a few years of experience, Hyojin's classmates had all grown into ninjas who could take charge of things on their own, so everyone had their own missions on weekdays, and it was difficult for them to gather together. "Ahem." After a light cough, Gale replied, Because of the celebration, except for the ninjas who are on duty, most of the ninjas are on vacation. Since his lungs were injured in the Third Ninja World War, Gale always looked sick, and he would cough a few times after saying a few words. Red nudged Gale with her arm and teased, "By the way, where is she in? Why didn't you call her?" Gale blushed and coughed again, and it took a while to recover. "She has a mission." The classmates gathered together, and because they were familiar with each other, there were often no taboos when talking, so the group of people soon became noisy. Sitting quietly by the window, Hyojin looked at the brightly lit village, and his thoughts spread. At this time, Kakashi came over and said, "Peace is so good." Kuroto smiled and said, "Yes, this celebration has released everyone's pressure. If it wasn't for this celebration, who would know how much everyone longs for peace?" Kakashi looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to them. So he lowered his voice and whispered, "Have you heard? Uchiha tried to contact the Kumo delegation, and for this reason, he had several conflicts with the Umbu." Hyojin, who has been secretly paying attention to the Kumo delegation, naturally knew about this news. "Yes, I also heard about it," Kakashi said worriedly. "If this goes on, the rift between Uchiha and the village will only get bigger and bigger." For Uchiha, Kakashi has a deep bond. His best friend, Uchiha Obsidian, gave him a precious Sharingan, and his colleague Uchiha Jishue is under great pressure to keep the secret that he has Manjikyu Sharingan. Therefore, from the bottom of his heart, he hopes that Uchiha can coexist peacefully with the village. Hyojin also sighed lightly. At this point, there is no possibility of reconciliation between Uchiha and the village. The problem now is not that Uchiha wants to rebel and seize power, because since the establishment of Mai, the Uchiha clan has always wanted to seize control of Mai. This demand has never changed from beginning to end. The real problem now is that the weakening Naruto faction can no longer suppress Uchiha. Therefore, there are only two ways to solve this problem. One is to strengthen the strength of Naruto faction, so that Uchiha does not dare to act rashly like the previous decades. The other is to weaken the strength of Uchiha, so that they have no strength to realize any ambitions. But the current Uchiha clan is a powder keg. Once the village takes action to weaken Uchiha clan, it will inevitably be attacked by Uchiha clan. At that time, either the village eradicates the Uchiha clan, or Uchiha succeeds in seizing power. Of course, it is also possible that the village will be torn apart. Suddenly, Red Bean walked in front of Hyojin. "Kuroto, I want to challenge you." Hyojin said, "You are drunk." "I am not drunk." Putting the bottle in her hand on the table heavily, Red Bean said, "Come with me. Let's go to the training ground." With that, Red Bean rushed out of the window. Hyojin said helplessly, "I will go and see." Kakashi asked, "Do you want me to go with you?" Chapter 171. Shuttling through the busy streets, Hyojin seemed to be leisurely, but his figure was surprisingly fast. In the blink of an eye, he had passed through several crowded long streets, almost catching up with Red Bean, who was running on the roof. Not long after, the two of them arrived at a secluded training ground. Looking at Red Bean, who was still a little drunk, Hyojin said helplessly, "All right, stop it." Red Bean stared at Hyojin and asked, "Why?" "Why what?" Hyojin was a little confused. "You know what I'm talking about." Red Bean, who was using the alcohol to vent her stress, became more and more excited and shouted, "Why can you be like a normal person and not care about other people's opinions?" After being stunned for a moment, Hyojin reacted. At this moment, he understood what Red Bean was asking. Unlike other students, Hyojin and Red Bean had always been labeled as Orochimaru, so it was inevitable that people in the village would point fingers at them. The difference was that Red Bean had been silently enduring these criticisms, while Hyojin did not care about them at all. Sighing softly, Hyojin said, "Red Bean, you care too much about other people's opinions." Red Bean looked puzzled. "But how can you not care?" Hyojin shook his head with a wry smile and said silently in his heart, "Because I'm Orochimaru's spy. Those guys who were pointing at me didn't wrongly accuse me, so why should I be angry?" No, Now I should be considered partners with Orochimaru. At this time, Red Bean took out a kunai from the ninja bag at her waist. I want to challenge you. Take this. Hyojin didn't try to persuade him any further. He just nodded and said, let's begin. Hyojin knew that Red Bean's so-called challenge was just to find someone to vent her pent-up emotions. As for why Red Bean came to him, it was because there were not many of Orochimaru's old subordinates left in the village. Red Bean's gaze turned cold as she shouted in a low voice, "Hidden shadow, snake hand." Swish, accompanied by the sound of breaking wind, a few slender, venomous snakes shot out from Red Bean's sleeves and went straight for Hyojin. Hyojin did not dodge. Instead, he stood still and pulled out the blade of grass from his waist. Maru casually brandished his sword, and in an instant, the poisonous snake that was shooting at him was cut into pieces. One was cut into several pieces, powerlessly falling to the ground. Red Bean suddenly froze. Hidden Shadow Snake Hand was one of Orochimaru's famous tricks. Not only was it fast, but it was also powerful. Coupled with snake venom, it could often be used to defeat the enemy with one blow. Red Bean thought that even if this trick couldn't take down Hyojin, it could at least cause some trouble for Hyojin. She never thought that Hyojin would be able to crack her unique skill so easily. Hyojin put away the blade of grass. Maru laughed and said, "If this is all you have, you can't beat me." Red Bean's anger surged, and she quickly printed, "Fire release, great fireball technique." In an instant, a huge fireball was spewed from Red Bean's mouth, and the dim practice field was red. Hyojin's expression did not change. His figure flashed, and he avoided Red Bean's great fireball technique. At this time, Red Bean came up and started a physical contest with Hyojin. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of fists and feet colliding immediately rang through the practice field. Red Bean attacked wildly, as if it was not Hyojin in front of her, but a life and death enemy. Hyojin played the role of a sparring partner dutifully. He did not fight back, but silently resolved Red Bean's offensive. After a long time, Hyojin beat back the weak Red Bean and said with a smile, "Are you better?" Red Bean sat on the ground powerlessly, and tears slowly flowed down. Hyojin asked, "Do you need me to take you home?" Red Bean said, "I hate him." Hyojin knew that the he in Red Bean's mouth referred to Orochimaru, but he did not persuade her. Instead, he asked lightly, "Do you hate him for defecting, or do you hate him for not taking you with him?" Red Bean heard this and felt like she was struck by lightning. As he turned around and walked out of the practice field, Hyojin said leisurely, "If it's the former, you don't need to blame yourself. It's not your fault. If it's the latter, then become stronger and let him know that he was wrong." After leaving the practice field, Hyojin did not go home immediately. Instead, he wandered around the village. When he passed by a pond, he found Itachi sitting side by the pond with a girl with the Uchiha clan emblem printed on her clothes. They were talking and laughing while eating the village's famous tricolor meatballs. Itachi, who always had a straight face, showed a rare happy smile at this time. "Oh, should I also bring some tricolor meatballs back for Ling to taste?" Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth and did not go forward to disturb them. Instead, he wondered if he should also buy some tricolor meatballs back, so he changed his direction and walked toward the street. When passing by a ramen shop, Kuroda was taken aback by the long queue. Is the business so good? In the queue, he found a little figure with yellow hair. The little guy was scratching his ears and cheeks in the queue. From time to time, he looked at the number of people in front of him. The coupon in his hand was squeezed out of shape. Maelstrom Naruto. After recognizing the little guy's identity, Hyojin subconsciously looked around. Sure enough, on a big tree not far away, he found an umbu wrapped in a black cloak. There is no doubt that this umbu should be the umbu ninja responsible for personal protection of Naruto. After all, half of the Nine Tails chakra was sealed in Naruto's body. It was an important strategic weapon of the village and could not be lost. Turning his eyes to Naruto, Hyojin slowly turned on the Byakugan. In the vision of the Byakugan, the chakra in Naruto's body was like a burning flame, huge and fierce, which made Hyojin gasp. Even if he had expected it, this result still greatly surprised him. Sure enough, it's the Whirlpool clan. After turning off the Byakugan, Hyojin secretly sighed. Not to mention the Nine Tails chakra, Naruto's own chakra was far beyond the ordinary ninja. It could be seen that the Whirlpool clan was worthy of being comparable to the Thousand Hand clan. Hyojin then thought that in Naruto's body, in addition to his own chakra and the Nine Tails chakra, there was also his father's 4 generations Naruto Minato's chakra, and his mother's former Nine Tails' Jinchuriki Whirlpool chakra. If the reincarnated Azura's chakra was counted, there would be a total of 5 chakra. The Child of Prophecy. Chapter 172. Encountering Naruto on the street, Hyojin suddenly realized that the protagonists in the original story have gradually grown up, and it won't be long before they rise to prominence in the shinobi world. With his hands in his pockets, Hyojin walked past the Ichikawa ramen shop with a calm expression. He was not in a hurry to contact Uzumaki Naruto, the Child of Prophecy, because it's not the right time yet. When he returned home, Hyojin was still empty-handed. Originally, he planned to bring back some tricolor meatballs, but he obviously underestimated the enthusiasm of the villagers for tricolor meatballs. When he arrived at the shop selling tricolor meatballs, the sold-out sign was already hung outside the shop for several hours. You came out and greeted him. "Kuroto, welcome home." Before entering the house, Hyojin smelled a fragrance. He sniffed and said, "So fragrant. Is it the smell of barbecue?" You smiled and then pulled Hyojin into the house. As soon as he entered the house, Hyojin saw a large table full of dishes and said with a smile, "Why is it so sumptuous?" You sat on the side, patted her chest, and took a long sigh of relief. "The war is finally over, of course. We have to celebrate. You don't know, every time you go to the battlefield, I'm always on tenterhooks, afraid that you—" Bah, I shouldn't have said this. Hyojin smiled slightly on the surface, but in his heart, he had a feeling that the dark clouds of war were still lingering over the village. A few days later, Team 11, who had finished their vacation, also joined the ranks of protecting the Kumo envoys. For this task, arranged by 3 generations Naruto, Hyojin was very satisfied, because this way, he can openly monitor the members of the Kumo envoys. However, contrary to most people's expectations, the Kumo envoys did not immediately leave Mai after signing the peace agreement, but temporarily stayed in Mai. During this time, the leader of the Kumo envoys, Watanabe, was like an ordinary tourist, walking through the streets and alleys of Mai. It can be said that except for the military-restricted areas, he has visited the entire village. Because of his identity as the leader of the Kumo envoys, Mai couldn't stop him, so he could only let him wander around. Hyojin knows very well that this guy is not just strolling around. He must be plotting something, but because of the butterfly effect brought by him, Hyojin is not sure whether Kumo Village is still the same as in the original space-time, targeting Hyuga Hinata Hyuga. At the same time, Hyojin is sure that there must be a high-level cloud spy hidden in the village, so Hyojin can't rule out the possibility that Watanabe is wandering around to find an opportunity to contact the spy. Just like that, a few days passed. Suddenly, Watanabe uncharacteristically stayed in the diplomatic mission's encampment and did not run around. The sun was setting and the night was getting darker. Outside the encampment of the Kumo envoys, Hyojin and Jishuei were sitting on a big tree, chatting with each other. Suddenly, Jishuei's eyes turned cold, and he pointed towards the courtyard of the encampment of the Kumo envoys. "Kuroto-san, look over there." Hyojin nodded. "Yeah, I saw it." At this moment, a figure dressed in nocturnal clothes was sneaking out of the encampment of the Kumo envoys. Byakugan open. Hyojin immediately activated the Byakugan. After activating the Byakugan, he quickly recognized that this figure was none other than the leader of the Kumo envoys, Watanabe. Hyojin frowned and said, "It's a ninja from Kumo." Jishuei wasn't too surprised. I already felt that there was something wrong with this guy. Hyojin, who was still observing Watanabe with the Byakugan, frowned and said, "There is something wrong with his chakra's amount. It looks like a shadow clone. After saying that, Hyojin used the Byakugan to observe the mansion of the Kumo envoys and found that there were only 11 chakras amount left in the mansion. So he murmured, "Isn't it a shadow clone?" Jishui thought for a moment. "Kuroto-san, I will follow him." Hyojin shook his head. "No, we will directly block him." No matter what Watanabe wants to do, Hyojin is not interested. The only thing he is interested in right now is to send the Kumo envoys out of Mai. Watanabe, wearing nocturnal clothes and going out in the middle of the night, obviously gave Hyojin a good excuse. As long as he grasps this excuse, he can let the Kumo envoys leave Mai as soon as possible. Swish swish, with the sound of breaking through the air, both Homusubi and Homusubi appeared in front of Watanabe, using the body flicker technique, and blocked his path. Hyojin's eyes were cold. "Mr. Watanabe, where are you going?" Watanabe, who was wearing nocturnal clothes, smiled and took off the mask on his face. "You two are indeed the elite Umbu of Mai," Jishui said seriously. "Your behavior is destroying the hard-won peace between our two countries." Watanabe smiled and wanted to explain. At this time, Hyojin's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly punched Watanabe's chest. Jishui was shocked. "Kuroto-san," bang. Before Jishui finished speaking, Watanabe turned into a cloud of white smoke in front of him. Jishui's face suddenly sank. Shadow clone? Hyojin's face became ugly. Who was responsible for monitoring the Kumo envoys during the day? It's impossible for Hyojin to monitor the Kumo envoys 24 hours a day, so part of the time is the responsibility of other Umbu squads. Obviously, Watanabe took advantage of a loophole when other Umbu were monitoring the Kumo envoys and escaped from the temporary residence of the Kumo envoys under the cover of the Shadow Clone. Jishui recalled and said, "It seems to be Class 5. Hyojin also knows that now is not the time to blame. So he said, "Come with me." After saying that, Kuroto's figure flashed and rushed towards the Hyuga clan. Jishui also realized the seriousness of the problem at this time, so he didn't ask much and quickly followed. Both of them have outstanding physical skills, so their speed is naturally very fast, so it didn't take long for them to arrive at the Hyuga clan's territory. After jumping from the eaves, Hyojin asked the patrolling Hyuga clansman, "I am Hyojin. I am on a mission. Did you find any suspicious people in the clan land?" Hyojin is already a celebrity in the Hyuga clan, so after seeing him, the patrolling Hyuga clansman didn't hesitate and replied, "What happened?" "There is no abnormality in the clan land." After a slight sigh of relief, Hyojin, who was still a little worried, said, "Take me to see the patriarch." The patrolling Hyuga clansman quickly led Hyojin and Jishui towards the Hyuga clan's mansion. As soon as they arrived in front of the mansion, Hyojin, who was using the Byakugan, found that Watanabe, who was wearing the same nocturnal outfit as before, was walking out with Hinata, and not far away, Hyuga Hayashi, who was full of killing intent, had already chased after them. Chapter 173. The moment he stopped Hayashi, Hyojin shouted, "Patriarch, don't be impulsive. He is a Kumo shinobi." Hyuga Hayashi's face turned solemn when he heard this, and the murderous intent on his body also dissipated. As the patriarch of the Hyuga clan of the Mai clan, Hyuga Hayashi naturally knows how sensitive the identity of a Kumo shinobi is. If something happens to him in the territory of the Hyuga clan, the consequences will be unimaginable. Jishui said angrily, "Watanabe, do you want to start a war?" He didn't expect that Watanabe, as the leader of the Kumo envoys, would sneak into the Hyuga clan's mansion and try to kidnap the heir of the Hyuga clan. Watanabe took out a kunai and pressed it against Hinata's throat. Hinata, who had already fainted, knew nothing about this, but when the sharp kunai was pressed against her white neck, her immature face unconsciously showed a trace of pain. Seeing this, Hyuga Hayashi immediately shouted, "Stop!" Watanabe didn't take further action, but said with a chuckle, "Haha, I didn't expect to be noticed so quickly." Hyojin's eyes were deep, and his face was gloomy. The calmness shown by Watanabe at the moment made him feel slightly uneasy, and what made him even more puzzled was how Watanabe could sneak into the Hyuga clan's mansion quietly. Something's wrong. How did he bypass the heavy guards and sneak into Hinata's bedroom? Instantly, a doubt shrouded Hyojin's heart. Because of the Byakugan, the security of the Hyuga clan's mansion is not much worse than that of the Naruto building. Even Hyojin himself doesn't have full confidence to sneak into Hinata's bedroom quietly. It stands to reason that Watanabe knows nothing about the layout of the Hyuga clan's mansion, and it is even more impossible for him to successfully sneak in. But the truth was that not only did Watanabe successfully sneak into Hinata's dormitory, he even almost kidnapped Hinata out of the Zone clan's mansion. Jishui was both angry and puzzled at the thought that the piece they had worked so hard for might be destroyed just like that. She asked why. Is your Cloud Village so eager for war? No. Watanabe suddenly let out a low roar with abnormal emotions. If that's the case, then why are you doing this? After asking coldly, Hyojin curled his lips and said, could it be that it's just for a pair of eyes? White eyes? In my eyes, your bloodline inheritance is not even worth mentioning. Watanabe increased the strength of the kunai against Hinata's throat. The sharp edge of the kunai cut through Hinata's skin, and a stream of blood flowed down. Jishui was a little confused. If it's not for the Byakugan Kekiai, then why did you sneak into the Hyuga clan's territory in the middle of the night? And you also want to kidnap the Hyuga clan's eldest daughter? Watanabe's mood gradually calmed down, restoring his previous indifferent calmness. You cancerous tumors will never understand. Hyuga Hayashi slowly opened the Byakugan, staring at Watanabe, looking for a chance to save Hinata. Hyojin tightly frowned, because he found that Watanabe seemed to have the will to die. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin tentatively said, if you let Hinata go, we can pretend that nothing happened. Watanabe said with a playful smile, as expected of a village that is accustomed to deceiving others and themselves. My evil deeds can also be condoned? Jishui angrily said, we let you live. Are you still not satisfied? You. Kuroto stopped Tomasubi and said in a low voice, don't say anything. He never thought of leaving this place alive. At this point, Hyojin vaguely guessed the deep meaning of Watanabe kidnapping Hinata, but he still has some doubts. What is the purpose of Watanabe risking his life to set up this trap? Watanabe looked at Hyojin and did not deny it. Yes, you guessed it. Jishui was puzzled. Why? Watanabe's expression became calm. In order to remove the cancer of the shinobi world. Cancer? After a pause, Hyojin said playfully, the cancer you're talking about, are you referring to Armai? Watanabe, who is determined to die, said frankly, isn't the Mai who connives and protects the shinobi village system a cancer of the shinobi world? Your Hashirama clearly has the strength to unify the shinobi world, but he sits and watches the establishment of the shinobi villages that are hostile to each other. Isn't your Mai the source of the war? Jishui was suddenly speechless. Hayashi's expression also froze. He never expected that Watanabe would say such words. Your Hashirama, why didn't he unify the shinobi world and completely eliminate the war? After a pause, Watanabe continued to ask, why did he establish the shinobi village as a war machine? Facing Watanabe's question, Jishui was speechless. Hayashi was silent. For these people who had just experienced the Third Shinobi World War, the tragedy of the war was not described in the scrolls, but the pain they experienced personally. This experience was so unforgettable that even now, when many ninjas closed their eyes, they could still remember the mountains of corpses and seas of blood on the battlefield. Looking at the source of the war, the establishment of the shinobi village was indeed the main reason for the sharp increase in the intensity of the war. Although the Warring States period was chaotic, but taking into account the continuation and inheritance of the clan, the conflicts between the major clans often stopped, and very few clans would choose to die together. Therefore, Although the Warring States period was chaotic, the intensity of the war was not high. But after the establishment of the shinobi village, the intensity and scale of the war instantly increased by dozens of times. Many Kekkei shinobi clans and secret art shinobi clans that have been passed down for thousands of years have either died or declined in just a short period of 40 to 50 years after the establishment of the shinobi village. For example, the Snow clan with the Ice Release, the Kagaya clan with the Bone Vein, the Uzumaki clan with the Sage Body, and so on were all famous Kekkei shinobi clans during the Warring States period, but now all of them have been wiped out, leaving only a few clansmen in the shinobi world. The Thousand Hands clan that founded the Mai clan is also very small and is on the verge of extinction. For example, the Hitaki clan that is proficient in swordsmanship, the Kato clan that is proficient in the spiritualization technique, and other weaker secret art shinobi clans have been wiped out. If the conflict between Uchiha and the village continues to worsen, then in a few years, the Kekkei shinobi clan that founded the Mai clan together with the Thousand Hands clan will also disappear from the shinobi world. Since your Mai clan doesn't have the courage to unify the shinobi world, then let us Kyumo do it. After a cold smile, Watanabe continued, "For the sake of the final piece, my sacrifice is nothing." Seeing that Watanabe was about to take action, Hyojin's eyes turned cold, and he shouted to Jishue, "Quickly use Genjutsu to restrain him." Chapter 174. For Jishue's Genjutsu. Hyojin is still very confident. Even if he doesn't count the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique Koto Amatsukami, Jishue's Genjutsu strength is also one of the best in the shinobi world. However, Watanabe was not controlled by Jishue's Genjutsu. He fiercely raised the kunai in his hand and stabbed it towards Hinata, who was unconscious in his arms. Hyuga Hayashi was suddenly shocked and almost subconsciously rushed forward. His palms filled with chakra fiercely hit Watanabe. And at the moment when the kunai was about to stab Hinata, Watanabe's mouth curled up, revealing a strange smile. The sharp edge of the kunai stopped in front of Hinata's neck. Bang! Hyuga Hayashi's palms instantly hit Watanabe, who did not dodge. Puff! With a muffled sound, Watanabe slowly fell. Looking at Watanabe, who fell to the ground, without any breath, Hyuga Hayashi's face was gloomy and terrible. He has realized that he has fallen into Watanabe's trap. Jishue's eyebrows twisted into a ball. Why did my Genjutsu fail? Hyojin said he should have engraved some kind of Fuinjutsu in his brain. Engraving Fuinjutsu in the brain can be immune to Genjutsu to a certain extent, and can also protect the information in the brain from being read and spied on by anyone. But the drawback is that too overbearing Fuinjutsu will also destroy the brain tissue. So the ninjas who dare to engrave Fuinjutsu in the brain are almost all dead soldiers who perform a deadly mission. Watanabe is obviously a radical Fuinjutsu in the Kumo village, so it is likely that he has already engraved Fuinjutsu in his brain before leaving Kumo village. At this time, there was a noise in the distance. This noise was very ear-piercing in the quiet village in the dead of night. Jishue looked in the direction of the noise and said in a deep voice, the sound came from the Kumo envoy's encampment. Hyojin was not surprised. Well, they should be making a ruckus now. This time, Watanabe was deliberately trying to blackmail them, so the Kumo envoys must cooperate with him. Otherwise, wouldn't Watanabe have died in vain? Hayashi, who was carrying Hinata, walked over and said anxiously, I'm afraid this matter will be very troublesome. Hyojin nodded. Watanabe's purpose is very clear. He wants to die in the Hyuga clan's territory, and it would be best if he could die in the hands of the Hyuga Patriarch, so that Kumo village can launch an attack on Konoha. And Mai has only two choices, either hand over the Patriarch of the Hyuga clan, or choose war. If Mai chooses the former and hands over the Patriarch of the Hyuga clan, then the top Mai clan would be equivalent to offending both Uchiha and Hyuga clan at the same time. At that time, Kumo village only needs to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, and watch the internal strife of Mai. If Mai chooses the latter and refuses to hand over the patriarch of the Hyuga clan, then the radicals in Kyumo village can use this as an excuse to persuade the conservatives in Kyumo village to launch a full-scale war against Mai. Therefore, no matter what choice Mai makes for the radicals in Kyumo village, this is a win-win deal. After analyzing the purpose of Watanabe, Hyojin narrowed his eyes. There's no doubt that the person who made this plan knows the current situation of Mai very well. He knows very well that Uchiha and the village are on the verge of breaking off. At the same time, he also knows that a single Uchiha is not enough to fight against the entire Mai clan. Therefore, at this sensitive time, he used this kind of underhanded means to drag the Hyuga clan into the water, forcing the Hyuga clan to the side of Uchiha, and let the two clans fight against Mai together, intensifying the internal strife of Mai. This Kyumo spy not only knows the situation in the village, but also knows the layout of the Hyuga clan's mansion. Who is he? Hyojin is very sure that with the help of this spy, Watanabe must have been able to sneak into the Hyuga clan's mansion and kidnap the sleeping Hinata. Before, Hyojin has been wondering why Hayashi was able to kill the Hyuga clan shinobi in a single blow when both sides were on guard. As the patriarch of the Hyuga clan, Hayashi's strength is naturally unquestionable, but he is not strong enough to kill the Hyuga shinobi in a single blow. Now that I think about it, everything is reasonable. The noise in the distance is getting closer and closer. Hyojin immediately recovered his scattered thoughts and said to Hayashi, "The other party deliberately came to die. Their purpose is not to kill Byakugan." Hayashi was silent when he heard this. The other party used this kind of underhanded means. It is simply impossible to guard against, because even if Hayashi can hold back, Watanabe will choose to commit suicide at the right time. And Watanabe has the identity of the leader of the envoy mission. Mai can't restrict his actions at all, so if he wants to deliberately blackmail himself to commit suicide, no one can stop him. After jumping on the eaves and looking into the distance for a while, Jishuei said, "There are a lot of people coming this way." Hayashi's face was gloomy, and he sighed softly. "You can go. I will be responsible for the matters here. Let me do it." After smiling, Hyojin said to Hayashi, "Tell the people who know about it. Don't leak the matter of Watanabe breaking into the Hyuga clan's land." After saying that, Hyojin lifted Watanabe's body. Hayashi asked curiously, "What are you going to do with it?" Hyojin chuckled. "Patriarch, you don't need to know anything. You didn't see anyone tonight." After saying that, Hyojin called Jishuei while carrying Watanabe's body, and then the two quickly disappeared into the night. Hayashi, who was relieved, quickly ordered the people around him. Everything returned to normal. Patrol as usual. Don't mention what happened just now to anyone. Not long after, the Kyumo envoys and a large number of my umbu arrived at the Hyuga clan's land. Another jonin of the Kyumo envoys said, "I saw a ninja wearing your Hyuga clan's emblem kidnapped our leader, Watanabe-sama." Hayashi, who had already settled Hinata, said calmly, "I have not seen your leader." Kyumo jonin sneered, "Does your Hyuga clan want to shelter a criminal?" The captain of my umbu, who followed them, signaled to Hayashi with his eyes, asking him if he really kidnapped Watanabe. In the original timeline, Hayashi only thought that this was an act of self-defense, so he didn't deal with Watanabe's body in time. And in the end, he was bitten by Kyumo and fell into a dilemma. But now that Watanabe's body has been taken away by Hyojin, Hayashi said calmly, "Please pay attention to your words." Chapter 175. The request of the Kyumo jonin immediately put the umbu captain in a dilemma. On one side is the Kyumo envoys, and on the other side is the Kyumo clan's bloodline clan, both of which cannot be easily offended. So what should he do? Hyuga Hayashi stared coldly at the Kyumo jonin and said, "This is impossible. Watanabe's body has been taken away by Hyojin, so the Kyumo clan will definitely not be able to find any results. But even so, Hayashi can't easily let the Kyumo clan enter the clan land to search, because this involves the honor of the Hyuga clan. If the Hyuga clan easily gives in when the Kyumo clan says that they want to search, then not only will the prestige of the Hyuga clan be greatly reduced, but it will also expose the flaws of the Hyuga clan. Seeing this, the Umbu captain quickly persuaded the Kumo Jonin. Let's go to other places to search first. The Hyuga clan has no reason to attack and kidnap Mr. Watanabe. The Kumo Jonin was already prepared for conflict, so the Kumo Jonin refused to give in and said fiercely, "You, my clan, attacked the leader of our Kumo envoys. This is a blatant violation of the peace agreement. If you don't let us search now, then I have no choice but to return to Kumo village immediately and report to Laying Sama truthfully." The Umbu captain's face stiffened, and he was already a little unhappy with the Kumo clan's unreasonable pestering. But now that things have reached this point, he must make a choice immediately. Otherwise, the hard-won peace between the two countries may be in vain. Therefore, the Umbu captain came to Hayashi's side and whispered in his ear, "Hayashi-sama, it is better to let them go in and check. I will control the scene and not let this matter spread out." Knowing the sinister intentions of the Kumo clan, Hayashi was just putting on an act, and since he had done enough, he nodded. The Kumo Jonin looked happy and quickly entered the Hyuga clan residence with his subordinates. The Umbu captain also followed into the Hyuga clan residence, and seeing that there was no trace of fighting in the residence, he was relieved. Although Kuroda doesn't believe that the Hyuga clan would attack the leader of the Kumo envoys for no reason, but the accusation made by the Kumo clan still makes him a little worried. After searching around and finding nothing, the Jonin's face became gloomy. The captain of the Black Squad was no longer polite and said in a deep voice, "Since we didn't find anything, let's go somewhere else to look." Kumo Jonin snorted coldly, "Don't be in such a hurry." After saying that, Kumo Jonin formed a hand seal and sensed for a moment, and then immediately looked into the distance with a puzzled expression. "Huh? Why is it here?" On Hyojin's and Jishue's side, two people carrying Watanabe's corpse were running towards the edge of the village. How to deal with Watanabe's body? Hyojin hasn't thought about it yet, but taking the body away from the Hyuga clan's land is definitely not wrong. After a brief silence, Jishue couldn't hold back anymore and asked Hyojin, "Kuroto-san, do you think what Watanabe said was right or wrong?" There is no doubt that Watanabe's words before his death had a certain impact on Jishue, causing him to have many doubts. Hyojin said casually, "There is some truth to it." Hyojin partially agrees with Watanabe's views on the shinobi village system. "It has only been 50 years since the establishment of my village, and the establishment of the other major villages was a little later than my village. That is to say, the shinobi village system has only been around for 50 years. Because of the first Naruto, the shinobi world was peaceful in the first 10 years of the shinobi village's existence. But as soon as Hashirama died, the situation immediately changed. Excluding the first 10 years of Hashirama's existence, in the next 40 years, 3 great wars broke out in the shinobi world. On average, a terrible war that affects the entire shinobi world will break out every 13 years. In other words, each shinobi war will lose an entire generation, and after 10 years of rest and recuperation, the new generation will grow up, and then the next shinobi war will break out, and then another generation will be lost. This cycle has already been repeated 3 times. Jishue asked, "Do you also think that Hashirama was wrong?" Hyojin said calmly, "Hashirama did miss the best time to unify the shinobi world, but there is nothing to criticize about this. Hashirama experienced the chaos of the Warring States period, and he wanted to change the world, so he created the shinobi village system. From an initial point of view, Hashirama did not do anything wrong. But to criticize Hashirama's decision at that time is unfair to some extent, just like how no one can say for sure whether the war will disappear after the unification of the shinobi world. No one can say for sure what will happen in the future. So throwing all the blame of the war on the predecessors is, in fact, the manifestation of the incompetence of the successors. In Hyojin's view, the real mistake of Hashirama was to distribute the tailed beasts to other villages. The purpose of Hashirama's doing this may be to let the villages maintain a balance and strength, so as to restrain each other and achieve the purpose of maintaining peace in the shinobi world. But contrary to what he wanted, Hashirama's action of distributing the tailed beasts instead intensified the war, causing Mai to suffer a lot. Take the current situation as an example. If Cloud Village didn't have the two perfect Jinchuriki, Hachibi, and Nibi Yujito, they wouldn't have the confidence to start a war. Jishui thought for a while and asked, "Then do you think that Cloud Village is right?" Cloud Village? With a chuckle, Hyojin said with disdain, "Cloud Village may have the magnanimity to unify the shinobi world, but unfortunately, they don't have the strength to do so. Magnanimity is indeed important, but without matching strength, magnanimity is just empty talk. The current strength of Cloud Village is almost the same as that of Mai. If there is no need to guard against other villages, one-on-one, Mai wouldn't be afraid of Cloud Village at all. One must know that the current 3 generations are not the same as the old 3 generations who will be suppressed by Orochimaru in the Chunin exam 10 years later. Mai's problem is that every time in the Shinobi World War, he has to fight one against many. In the face of Kumo's provocation, Konoha has to guard against the rebellion of the Uchiha clan and other shinobi villages, which is why Konoha's hands and feet are tied and weak. Jishui asked curiously, "Isn't Cloud Village strong enough?" In Jishui's eyes, Cloud Village has 4 generations Lei-ing, Hachibi's Jinchuriki, Nibi's Jinchuriki, and a large number of elite shinobi headed by Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito. Therefore, he was very surprised by Hyojin's disdain towards Cloud Village. Chapter 176. In the shinobi world, there is no lack of people who have just mastered a little power and can't wait to jump out and unify the shinobi world, such as the ancestor of the country of craftsmen, Hiriko, who has fused multiple Kekii, and Yomi, who worships foreign monsters, etc. But in the end, these people all became clowns without exception. The shinobi world is never as simple as it seems on the surface. After the death of Hashirama, Uchiha was almost invincible, but he was arrogant and stayed in the dark cave for decades. Even until his death, he didn't show up in the shinobi world, but pinned his hopes on Black Zetsu and Obsidian, hoping to come to the shinobi world with his full strength. Nagato fully awakened the Rinnegan for many years, and 6 Paths of Pain was almost invincible, but he was still trapped in a corner of the Rain Village, in the original time and space, until more than 10 years later, he chose to attack Mai personally. On the moon, the descendants of Otsutsuki controlled the giant Tenseigan, killing almost everyone in their way, but they still stayed obediently on the moon, spying on the shinobi world. Each of the 3 holy lands has strength not inferior to the 5 great shinobi villages, but they all hide in the holy land and don't easily set foot in the shinobi world. The evil god who bestowed the immortal body to Phaeton can easily curse Nibi's Jinchuriki with a large amount of chakra. His strength is not trivial, but he still silently preaches in the shinobi world. Why do so many strong people choose to stay dormant and wait for the opportunity? That's because they all know that their strength has not reached the level where they can sweep everything. Once they make a move, the consequences are unpredictable, so before they're completely sure, staying dormant is the safest choice. Hyojin's situation is the same. Not to mention the Sage of 6 Paths who exists in the shinobi world in soul form. And not to mention the descendants of Otsutsuki on the moon. Just Nagato alone, Hyojin doesn't have full confidence in defeating him. It must be known that after summoning 2 Toad Masters, Jiraiya's strength in Sage mode has surpassed ordinary Kage rank powerhouses. But even so, he was easily killed by the 6 Paths of Pain. That's right, Jiraiya was easily killed. Jiraiya didn't know the details of the 6 Paths of Pain, but Nagato also didn't know the strength of Jiraiya's immortal mode. In terms of intelligence, neither side was at a disadvantage. In the end, Jiraiya died in battle, and the 6 Paths of Pain suffered some losses. On the other hand, if Nagato were to use the powerful sealing technique, earth-shattering heavenly stars that had once created the moon, or summon the demon statue of the heretic Tao, Jiraiya would not even have the chance to enter the immortal mode. Hyojin didn't have full confidence in breaking free from the full-powered, earth-shattering heavenly stars that Nagato launched. In the battle with Mai, the reason why Naruto was able to break free from the seal of earth-shattering heavenly stars, in addition to Naruto's incomparably huge amount of chakras was largely because Nagato had consumed too much chakra to deal with Mai. And even if Hyojin could break free from Nagato's earth-shattering heavenly stars seal, he would have consumed a lot of chakra at that time, and once he was attacked by Obsidian and Zetsu, he would definitely lose. In the shinobi world, one can't stand out. The result of standing out is to be studied and targeted by others. Recollecting his thoughts, Hyojin said to Jishuei, "Leave the rest to me." Jishuei hurriedly said, "Kyumo ga cure. I know that Kyumo has bad intentions, so no matter what you do with this body, I will not leak any secret." Shaking his head, Hyojin explained, "It's not that I don't trust you, but we are both Umbu members who are carrying out a mission tonight, so we can't disappear at the same time. So you must return to the Kyumo envoy's encampment and cover for me." Hearing this, Jishuei hurriedly used the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and the Shadow Clone Jutsu also used the Body Transformation Jutsu, turning into Hyojin's appearance. Hyojin patted Jishuei's shoulder. "Go ahead, don't worry about me. Kyumogakure, be careful." Jishuei nodded and led the Shadow Clone Jutsu, who had transformed into Hyojin's appearance, towards the encampment of the Kyumo envoys. After sending away Jishuei, Hyojin thought for a while and came up with an idea. The Kyumo Jonin was leading the members of the envoys, as well as the Mai Umbu, towards the edge of the Mai village. The Umbu captain asked in confusion, "Are you sure that the direction is correct?" The Kyumo Jonin didn't say anything, but nodded calmly. The current situation has completely deviated from the original plan, and for a while he was caught off guard, but fortunately, Watanabe's body was engraved with a sensing technique, so he didn't have to worry about losing Watanabe's whereabouts. The Umbu captain frowned and said, "In front of us is a training field. After passing through the training field, we will reach the outer city wall. If the direction you sensed is correct, I am afraid that the person who kidnapped Watanabe has already escaped from the village." The Kyumo Jonin coldly said, "Humph, the leader of our envoys was attacked in my village, and my village is to blame." The Umbu captain didn't argue, but signaled his colleagues to immediately report the news to the Sanagai shinobi. Judging from the current situation, he can already conclude that someone has indeed attacked the leader of the Kyumo shinobi. But what is the identity of the other party? And what is their purpose? At the signal of the Umbu captain, 2 Umbu members immediately left the team and flew towards the Naruto building. It didn't take long for the group to arrive at the remote training field located at the edge of the village. This training field is located in a small forest surrounded by dense vegetation. So when the group passed through the outer forest, they found a figure standing quietly in the middle of the training field. The figure was wrapped in a black cloak with golden edges and a mask with a pattern of water ripples on the face, bathed in the cold moonlight, looking very mysterious. And at the feet of the mysterious person, there was a corpse wearing a nocturnal outfit. The group immediately stopped and surrounded the suspicious person standing in the middle of the training field. The Kyumo Jonin took a closer look and recognized the body lying at the feet of the mysterious person. It was the missing Watanabe, and his heart sank. The captain of the Black Ops was sizing up the mysterious man while gesturing to his subordinates, secretly deploying the siege strategy. At this time, the mysterious person took out a scroll and in front of everyone, sealed Watanabe's body in the scroll and chuckled, "Hey, a guy with a price of 50 million, I didn't expect him to be so weak." As the leader of the Kyumo envoys, Watanabe indeed has a bounty on the black market. Moreover, it is a huge bounty of 50 million. This bounty, in fact, doesn't need to guess to know that it was issued by the Rock Village. After all, the one who is most unwilling to sign a peace agreement between Mai and Kyumo is the Rock Village. Chapter 177. Watanabe is dead, and this is difficult to change. Even if Hyojin uses the Tenseigan's soul descent technique to control Watanabe's body, It is impossible for him to get away with it, because Watanabe has a special mission, and there must be some kind of tacit understanding between him and the other members of the Kumo envoys, or there must be some hidden code, and Hyojin, who knows nothing about this, can't solve this problem. Therefore, after a little consideration, Kuroda gave up the idea of controlling Watanabe's body. After all, there are many ways to manipulate corpses in the shinobi world, and the members of the Kumo envoys are not idiots. Instead of taking a huge risk, it is better to simply lead the conflict outside. Anyway, as long as Watanabe doesn't die in the Hyuga clan's territory, half of Kumo's conspiracy will be disrupted, and as for the rest, Hyojin can only take one step at a time. Listening to the mysterious person mentioning the bounty, the Kumo Jonin's heart suddenly tightened. The Umbu captain on the side shouted angrily, "Damn it, how dare you sneak into the Mai clan to commit murder?" The leader of the Kumo envoys was killed in the Mai clan. Even if it wasn't the work of the Mai shinobi, the Mai clan can't escape the blame. So after confirming Watanabe's death, the Umbu members responsible for protecting the Kumo envoys were filled with righteous indignation. Looking at the Umbu captain's fierce eyes under the mask, Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth and said with a playful smile, "Who told the Rock Village to put such a heavy bounty? If you want to blame someone, blame the Rock Village." The Kumo Jonin gritted his teeth. Rock Village! The hatred between the Kumo and Rock Village is something that can't be finished in a day and night. Putting aside the distant ones, the 3 generations of Liang were besieged and killed by tens of thousands of rock ninjas in order to cover the safe retreat of the main force. The captain of the Black Ops did not think too much about it. Right now, he was only thinking about how to retrieve Watanabe's corpse from Hyojin's hands. The leader of the Kumo envoys was killed in Mai, and if the news spread out, although Mai would be embarrassed, but this kind of thing is inevitable in the shinobi world. But if even the body of the leader of the Kumo envoys is taken away in exchange for bounty in the black market, then Mai would lose a lot of face. Hyojin, who had activated Byakugan, looked at the Black Ops team leader, gesturing to his colleagues behind his back, and smiled. In an instant, the 2 Umbu members used the teleportation technique and pounced on Hyojin from both sides. At the same time, the Shadow Squad leader in front of Hyojin threw 7 kunai at Hyojin. If one looked closely, they would find that these 7 kunai were all tied with specially treated steel wires. This kind of steel wire was not only tough, but also did not reflect light. It's this trick again. Hyojin didn't know how many times he had practiced this kind of coordinated attack with his colleagues in the Black Ops base. Even if he closed his eyes, he knew how to crack it. In an instant, Hyojin shot a few shurikens at the flying kunai, and then his figure flashed to meet the Umbu on the right side. The Umbu waved his long sword and was about to slash. The Umbu's slash was actually a pretense. The purpose was to force Hyojin back to his original position and back into the encirclement. This was also the most common trick in this set of coordinated attacks. Hyojin, who was well aware of this, raised the corner of his mouth and didn't dodge. The Umbu was suddenly shocked. This! Bang, with a muffled sound, Hyojin punched the Umbu's cheek and sent him flying. After succeeding, Hyojin didn't stop. With the remaining inertia of his body, he directly jumped out of the encirclement and flew toward the outer wall of Mai. The Umbu captain's face sank. After ordering an Umbu to report the news to the 3 generations, he quickly called other colleagues, as well as Kumo Jonin and others to catch up. The other party easily cracked the Umbu's coordinated attack, which meant that the other party was either extremely familiar with the Mai Umbu, or he was an extraordinary person. In either case, it was not good news for Mai. Now, the situation has gone beyond the control of the Umbu captain. He could only report the latest news to the 3 generations Naruto in time and wait for the village's support. After briefly getting rid of the siege of the Umbu, Hyojin came to the wall of Mai in a few leaps. Who? The guards on the wall immediately found Hyojin wearing a black cloak and a mask of Suijin. The guards on this section of the wall were a 4-man team. The members were 2 Chunin and 2 Genin. However, what Hyojin didn't expect was that one of the Chunin ninjas turned out to be his fiancée, Kuroto Ling. He couldn't help but think in his heart, isn't this girl always on duty in the village? When was she transferred to the outer wall? She didn't even tell me. Kuroto Ling slowly put up a soft fist posture and asked in a clear voice, who the hell are you? Can't let Ling activate Byakugan. After making up his mind, Hyojin's figure flashed and instantly knocked down the three my ninjas, except for Ling. Ling was shocked and was about to activate Byakugan. At this time, Hyojin had already appeared in front of her and hit her throat with one palm and the other toward her lower abdomen. As a member of the Hyuga clan, Ling is naturally good at taijutsu, so she immediately waved her palm to meet it. At the same time, the meridians on both sides of her forehead bulged slightly, and Byakugan was activated at this moment. But being bullied by Hyojin at this distance, even if Ling activated Byakugan, it would be useless. Bang! In just a few breaths, Hyojin, who had a strange figure, circled behind her and lightly hit Ling's neck with the back of his hand, knocking her out. After picking up the fainted Ling and slowly putting her on the ground, Hyojin shook his head and said, how many times have I said that you are still so hesitant? Gently putting Ling on the ground, Hyojin glanced at the increasingly noisy village, and then jumped off the outer wall of Mai without looking back and galloped out of the village. In his heart, he has made up his mind that after this matter is over, he will find a way to transfer Ling to the Hyuga clan. Ling's temperament is simple, and her vigilance is too low. She is not suitable to be the guard of the outer wall, and the outer wall is the first line of defense of the village, which is a relatively dangerous post. It belongs to the kind of post that either nothing happens, or if something happens, it will be a big deal. Just as Hyojin was still thinking about Ling's matter, suddenly, two figures stopped in front of him. Both of them were dressed in my Umbu attire, and they were very familiar with Hyojin because they were Kakashi and Guy from Umbu Team 11. Kakashi, who was wearing a fox mask, carefully looked at Hyojin, who was also wearing a mask, and then said coldly, don't resist, you can't escape. Chapter 178. With a depressed and complex mood, Jishui quietly returned to the Kumo envoy's encampment with the shadow clone who had transformed into Hyojin's appearance. At this time, there were only 2 Kumo Jonin stationed in the encampment, and the rest of the Kumo envoys followed the other Kumo Jonin to look for Watanabe. I'm a step late. In the other corner of the encampment, Jishui frowned when he didn't find the figures of Kakashi and Guy. Because Mai's residence is very large, including the front and back courtyards, it almost crosses several streets, so when they were on duty tonight, Team 11 was divided into 2 groups. Suijin and Homasubi are in one group, and Kakashi and Guy are in another group, and they're in the other group. After finding the Mai ninja, who temporarily came to maintain order, Jishui hurriedly asked, where are the Umbu who originally guarded this place? My ninja replied, all the nearby Umbu have gone to look for the leader of the Kumo envoys. Jishui shook his head helplessly and secretly said, I hope that Kuroto won't be blocked by Captain and the others. In the forest outside the wall, Hyojin, who was blocked by Kakashi and Guy, crossed his arms over his chest and chuckled. Do you think you can stop me with just the 2 of you? Provoked by Hyojin's words, the young guy was about to step forward and fight. Calm down. Kakashi used his body to block Guy, but his eyes were glued to Suijin's body the whole time. After being reminded by Kakashi, Guy restrained his anger. Guy is not an impatient person, but as the leader of the Kumo envoys, who is responsible for protecting the Kumo envoys, was kidnapped right under his nose. When Guy thought of the possible consequences of this incident, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Kakashi didn't rush to attack, but asked, who are you? Isn't I the leader of the 5 great shinobi villages? You can check it yourself. Pausing for a moment, Hyojin smiled and said, I know you want to stall for time and wait for reinforcements, but with just the 2 of you, I'm afraid you won't be able to stall for long. After being seen through by Hyojin, Kakashi's expression froze. He immediately formed a seal and shouted, Earth escape multiple earth flow walls. Hua! In an instant, 4 tall and sturdy earth walls rose around Hyojin, trapping Hyojin within. Kakashi, who had just used the earth escape technique, did not stop. His hands formed a seal again. Fire escape technique, grand fireball technique. Kakashi spat out a ball of fierce flames from his mouth, shooting towards the top of the 4 walls. With Kakashi's hand speed, the interval between the multiple earth flow walls and the grand fireball technique was almost a short breath. If Hyojin tried to escape from the multiple earth flow walls from the sky, he would inevitably hit the grand fireball technique. But Hyojin had to be a Kugan. When Kakashi formed the seal for the grand fireball technique, Hyojin had already guessed Kakashi's plan, so he did not try to escape from the sky at all. Instead, he formed a seal with Kakashi at the same time and shouted, "Water escape technique, water wave." Poof! A slender line of water sprayed out from Hyojin's mouth. Like a sharp water knife, it cut Kakashi's earth flow walls in half like cutting tofu. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this time, there was a loud sound of wind breaking. Hyojin didn't have to think carefully to know that it was Guy rushing over, so he stopped his body that was about to rush out of the multiple earth flow walls, deliberately lowered his body, and dodged sideways. Boom! Guy's powerful flying kick was dodged by Hyojin. He did not successfully hit the target, so he kicked Kakashi's earth flow wall, kicking a 2-palm-thick earth flow wall into pieces. In the splashing stone debris, Hyojin's figure flashed. His speed was so fast that he almost pulled out an afterimage under the moonlight and quickly rushed out of the multiple earth flow walls that Kakashi had set up. Hyojin did not choose to be entangled with Guy. Even he did not like to fight Guy in close combat. Guy's keenness and physical skills made Hyojin always secretly wonder if Guy had any hidden talent, because Guy's keenness was sometimes even comparable to the insight of the Sharingan and the Byakugan. It was completely unreasonable. Seeing Hyojin rushing towards him, Kakashi's right hand immediately flashed with dazzling lightning. Sizzle! At the same time, there was a sharp sound like that of countless birds fighting in the forest. Whoosh! 2 black shadows that were so fast that they could not be seen clearly, accompanied by whistling and screaming, rushed past in an instant. Drip! Hyojin looked down and found that his right arm had been scratched by Kakashi's Chidori. His sleeve was torn, and blood dripped along the cuff to the ground. On the other side, Kakashi's body swayed. He staggered a few steps, and then half knelt on the ground. Guy quickly rushed over to support Kakashi and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Kakashi shook his head, but his hand was tightly covering his abdomen. Guy glanced at Kakashi's hand that was covering his abdomen, and a lot of red blood seeped out between his fingers. At this time, Hyojin turned around, looked at Kakashi, and said, "I didn't expect that you could hurt me." Kakashi, who had recovered, stood up and said, "You can't escape." Looking at Kakashi in front of him, in a trance, Hyojin seemed to return to the moment when he sparred with Kakashi in the ninja school, in the Hyuga mansion. Hayashi sat in front of the long table, drinking tea leisurely. Hearing the shocking change, Richa, who hurried over, saw that his brother was so calm, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and asked, "What happened? Why did the Kumo envoys search our clan's land?" Hayashi said calmly, "Sit down, have a cup of tea first." Hisashi-sama sat down, picked up the cup of tea on the table, and took a sip. Whoosh! At this time, a Hyuga clansman appeared outside the house and reported, "Patriarch, we received news that the Kumo envoys and the Umbu found traces of the leader of the Kumo envoys in a training field. Their leader seems to have been attacked by a mysterious person." Hayashi nodded and ordered, "Continue to investigate." Richa was shocked when he heard this. What? The leader of the Kumo envoys was attacked in the village. Hayashi was calm and didn't say anything. After a while, another Hyuga clansman appeared outside the house and reported, "Patriarch, the latest news, the Umbu failed to capture the mysterious person. The other party has crossed the outer wall and escaped from the village." Hayashi was relieved in his heart and thought, "Fortunately, Kuroto dealt with this matter, otherwise this matter would be troublesome." After calming down and thinking about it carefully, Hayashi was scared. If the Kyumo found Watanabe's body in the Hyuga clan's land, the consequences would be unimaginable, and the Hyuga clan may even be involved in eternal damnation. Richa, who didn't know the inside story, slammed the table and stood up. "Damn it! I will chase after him." Hayashi stopped Richa and leisurely raised the teacup. At this time, another clansman appeared outside the house and reported, "Patriarch, Naruto-sama has personally gone to chase after the mysterious person." Puff. Chapter 179. Uchiha Clan's Mansion. The Uchiha clan's Fuyue sat quietly in the hall with a straight face. At this time, one of the Uchiha clansmen hurried in and whispered in Fuyue's ear, "Patriarch, I have found out some news about the Kyumo envoys. Watanabe was kidnapped, and it seems that the culprit is a bounty ninja who covets the bounty on Watanabe's head." Kidnapped. After listening to the report, Fuyue's face suddenly became solemn. After these days of secret contact, the leader of the Kyumo envoys, Watanabe, finally agreed to sneak into the Uchiha clan's territory tonight and meet with the Uchiha clan's patriarch Fuyue. As a result, Fuyue waited in the clan's territory for half the night, only to receive such a result. However, what Fuyue doesn't know is that Watanabe is only planning to send a shadow clone tonight, taking the last opportunity before his death to sow discord between the Uchiha clan and my clan. Unexpectedly, as soon as the shadow clone sneaked out of the Kyumo envoy's encampment, it was seen through by Hyojin, so he failed to keep the appointment. After pondering for a long time, Fuyue asked in a low voice, "Where is Jishue? Isn't he responsible for the safety of the Kyumo envoys tonight?" The Uchiha clansman who inquired about the news shook his head. The process of Watanabe's abduction has not been clearly investigated, but the accident should not have happened in the encampment. There are no traces of fighting there. Fuyue thought for a moment and ordered, "Immediately find Jishue and find out what happened." Yes. The Uchiha clansman immediately disappeared from the hall. At this time, Fuyue looked at the night outside the house. His face was gloomy and uncertain. After many attempts, Fuyue can now confirm that Jishue is on the side of the village. Because of this, the contact between the Uchiha clan and the Kyumo envoys is so troublesome. Otherwise, with Jishue's identity as an Umbu, it would be easy to contact the Kyumo envoys on behalf of the Uchiha clan. Jishue's position towards the village has strengthened Fuyue's determination to find Shinichi. In Fuyue's plan, once Shinichi returns to the family and assists the Uchiha clan to launch a coup, the village will no longer trust Jishue, and Jishue will have no choice but to return to the clan. This is also the reason why Fuyue is not in a hurry to have showdown with Jishue, because Fuyue believes that as long as the Uchiha clan launches a coup and the internal strife breaks out completely, the village will help him to force Jishue towards the Uchiha clan. At that time, the three pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan will be able to sweep the village and seize the position of Naruto that the Uchiha clan has been longing for many years. After a while, another Uchiha clansman jumped in and reported in a low voice, "Patriarch, the clansman responsible for monitoring the Hokage building has reported that Sandaime has personally led a large number of Umbu to hunt down the bounty nin who kidnapped Watanabe." Fuyue was not surprised by this. Instead, he stood up and said, "Assemble the police force's Jonin squad." The leader of the Kyumo envoys was kidnapped in the village. Even if it was just for show, Sandaime-sama had to show that he attached great importance to this matter. So Fugaku wasn't surprised that Sandaime-sama would personally participate in the hunt. The Uchiha clansman was stunned and asked, "Patriarch, are we also participating in the hunt?" Fuyue said, "Such a good opportunity to contact the Kyumo envoys. How can we let it go so easily?" Fuyue doesn't care about other things. He only cares about one thing, and that is to contact the Kyumo envoys and confirm whether Shinichi Uchiha defected to Kyumo or not. "Yes, I will go and gather the Jonin squad." The Uchiha clansman suddenly understood, and only now did he understand that participating in the roundup was just an excuse, and Fugaku's real purpose was to contact the Kumo envoys in the name of the roundup. Root base. The root ninjas, coming and going, are constantly reporting all kinds of information to Danzo. When he heard that 3 generations personally led the Umbu to hunt down the mysterious person, Danzo showed a thoughtful look and asked the man next to him, "Did you find out the identity of the mysterious person?" A root ninja next to him handed a document to Danzo and said, "From his appearance, it seems that he is the recently famous bounty ninja Tenseigan in the black market." Tenseigan. Danzo frowned and took the document. After a quick glance, Danzo threw the document on the ground and said, "Is this the information you collected?" In addition to a brief description of Tenseigan's appearance, there is only the identity of the bounty ninja. Other than that, there is no other useful information. Seeing Danzo angry, the root ninja immediately knelt down and explained, "This Tenseigan seems to have appeared out of thin air. There is no clue before, so we couldn't find more information. Waste." After angrily scolding, Danzo said, "Continue to investigate. I want to know who this Tenseigan is. Who is he working for?" In the forest outside the wall, Hyojin glanced at Kakashi's right hand, then moved his eyes to the blood stains on the ground. In the confrontation just now, Kakashi's Chidori only slightly scratched Hyojin's right arm, so the injury on Hyojin's right arm was caused by Chidori's lightning, and Kakashi's right hand was not stained with Hyojin's blood. Therefore, as long as a few drops of blood on the ground are dealt with, they can avoid being tracked by the smell. This is also a place where Kakashi has to guard against. After all, Kakashi has a group of ninja dogs. Making up his mind, Hyojin quickly printed the hand seals. Water release. Great waterfall technique. In an instant, a huge wave of water surged forward, and the momentum seemed to submerge the entire forest. Kakashi's face stiffened and quickly shouted to a guy next to him, "Be careful." Guy quickly responded, "Yes." Tacitly, the two jumped on the tree at the same time, but their eyes did not move away from Hyojin's body, and has been watching Hyojin's every move. After washing the ground with the great waterfall technique, Hyojin chuckled and printed the hand seals again and shouted, "Water release. Multiple water dragon technique." 3 huge water dragons with a diameter of 1 meter instantly rose from the ground, accompanied by splashing water, and hovered around Hyojin like living creatures. Hyojin pointed at Kakashi and Guy on the tree, and the 3 thick water dragons immediately rushed over. Kakashi did not dare to be careless, and immediately printed the hand seals. Water release. Water dragon bullet technique. In an instant, a water dragon also rose beside Kakashi, protecting him. Guy, who was on the side, flew to another big tree, avoiding Hyojin's water dragon attack. Taking advantage of this opportunity to force Kakashi and Guy to retreat, Hyojin no longer hesitated and immediately turned around and fled into the depths of the forest. At this time, Kakashi's voice came from behind him, psychic technique, earth release, tooth chasing technique. Bang, bang, bang. Chapter 180. Looking at the 8-headed ninja biting him, Hyojin was speechless. For some reason, he was inexplicably calm about being bitten by a dog, as if he was not surprised by it. But as a matter of fact, he really did not expect this to happen. Is it because I bumped into Kakashi, so I was subconsciously prepared to be bitten by a dog? Shaking his head, Hyojin threw this absurd thought out of his mind. At this time, Guy rushed over quickly. My whirlwind! Just when Guy was about to hit Hyojin, Kakashi's 8-headed ninja jumped to the side and avoided Guy's my whirlwind. Hyojin, who had no time to dodge, could only use his arms to protect his vital parts and take Guy's my whirlwind head-on. Boom! With a loud bang, Hyojin was sent flying and slammed into a big tree, breaking it. Cough, cough. After coughing twice, Hyojin stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Kakashi, Guy, and the 8-headed ninja surrounded Hyojin, preparing for the next wave of attack. Hyojin secretly thought, these ninja have already smelled my scent. It seems that ordinary methods will not be able to get rid of Kakashi in Guy's pursuit. Right at this moment, his expression suddenly became solemn, because in his vision of the Byakugan, a large group of ninjas were rushing over, and there were a few strong chakra reactions in this group of ninjas. They are all experts. In just an instant, Hyojin came to a conclusion. Because it was a water-release clone, its pupil power was far inferior to the pupil power of Hyojin's released Tenseigan. So when Hyojin discovered it, the large group of ninjas were already close at hand. Swish, swish, swish. Amidst the sound of breaking wind, a number of figures using the body flicker technique landed around Kuroto and surrounded him in the center. The one in the lead was none other than the Three Generations Naruto's ape Flying Sunchop. The Three Generations looked at the battlefield for a moment, then nodded at Kakashi and Kai. "You did well." Kakashi jumped to the side of Three Generations and said, "He is a water ninja. He is very strong." After gently nodding, Three Generations stared at Hyojin with a sharp, eagle-like gaze and said in a deep voice, "Speak. Who instructed you to attack the Kyumo envoys?" On the other side, the Jonin of the Kyumo delegation also stared at Hyojin, waiting for his answer. Hyojin shrugged his shoulders and said with a chuckle, "The one who instructed me is, of course, the 50 million Ryo bounty on the black market." This answer, I think Naruto-sama should be satisfied. In front of the Kyumo shinobi, Hyojin naturally wants to establish his identity as a bounty ninja and lead the trouble of killing Watanabe to the black market and to the rock village who issued the high bounty. Three Generations said indifferently, "Don't make any unnecessary resistance. Just surrender." The Umbu ninjas around were also eager to capture Hyojin alive. There is no doubt that everyone present feels that Hyojin is doomed. The Kyumo Jonin frowned. He always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what it was. Hyojin put one hand on his waist and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that this business trip would alarm Naruto. It really makes me feel fear and trepidation." Three Generations looked at Hyojin coldly. "I don't see even the slightest fear in you." Hyojin slowly raised his hands and said, "That's because you can't keep me here." After saying that, Hyojin finished his hand seals and shouted, "Ice release. Magic mirror ice crystal." Whoosh! In a burst of cold air, a sparkling and translucent ice mirror appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Ice release, Kekkei Genkai. Everyone, including Three Generations, was taken aback when they saw the ice mirror floating in the air. It stands to reason that with the annihilation of the Snow Clan by the mist, the ice release should be extinct in the shinobi world, but no one expected that the mysterious person wearing a black cloak and mask in front of them was actually a remnant of the Snow Clan. Seeing this scene, Kyumo Jonin was finally convinced that tonight's matter should have nothing to do with Mai. While Kuroto resents Rock Village for issuing a bounty on Watanabe's head, he was also quite regretful that Watanabe's plan, which was launched at the cost of his life, failed at the last step because of the interference of a bounty need. If Haku was here, he would have noticed that Hyojin's magic mirror ice crystal is completely different from the normal magic mirror ice crystal. In its normal state, the ice mirrors would form a semicircle, forming an incomparably huge hemispherical ice shield that would cover an entire area and confine the enemy within the ice shield. But now, Hyojin's magic mirror ice crystal is lined up in a long row in the air, extending to the distance. Taking advantage of the gap between everyone's surprise, Hyojin gently jumped and merged into one of the ice mirrors. "Everyone goodbye." As soon as his voice fell, the ice mirrors that were hanging in the air instantly moved. The long line of ice mirrors in midair dissipated with the ice mirror at the end and reformed at the front. The cycle repeated itself as it rapidly advanced into the distance. From afar, it looked like this long row of ice mirrors was flashing in the air. And Hyojin, who was hiding in the ice mirror, was also using his ice release ninjutsu to easily shuttle between the ice mirrors. The ice mirrors were like a moving track, and Hyojin was the train that was running on the track. This No one expected that the bounty nin in front of them would have such a trick up his sleeve, and all of them were stunned. 3 generations was the fastest to react, and he was the first to use the body flicker technique to catch up. The pursuit of 3 generations was like a signal, and a large number of my umbu followed. Kakashi and Guy were no exception. Watanabe's body is still in the hands of the mysterious person, so Kumo Jonin had no choice but to lead the members of the Kumo envoys to follow. At this time, Guy asked Kakashi, "Why haven't Kuroto and Jishue arrived yet?" Kakashi was also a little puzzled. According to the usual situation, once an accident occurs during a mission, both Suijin and Shursui are usually the first to react. But tonight, he doesn't know what's going on. Both of them haven't shown up yet. Guy asked again, "That person is obviously an ice release Kekai Jinkai. Why didn't he use ice release ninjutsu on us just now?" Kakashi said, "Although I don't know why, but when he fought with us before, he definitely didn't use his full strength. So we should be careful. His strength should be stronger than we thought." Chapter 181. In the quiet night, a long curtain of light flew over the forest, making the whole night sky hazy and illusory, as if everything has become unreal. If you look closely, you will find that the light curtain flying in the night sky is actually a clear ice mirror that exudes cold air. The cold and clear moonlight shone on the translucent ice mirrors, reflecting an illusory, hazy fluorescence. Layers upon layers of fluorescence interweaved with each other, forming a dreamlike light curtain. There is no doubt that this dreamy light curtain is Hyojin's ice release ninjutsu, magic mirror ice crystal. After several months of practice, Kuroto has successfully mastered the nature fusion of water and wind chakra, and has effectively mastered the ice release Kekkei Genkai. Of course, the reason why he was able to learn ice release so quickly is thanks to the Tenseigan soul descent technique. It is precisely because of the Tenseigan soul descent technique that he was able to possess Haku's body and personally experience the process of using ice release from his soul to his body. Don't underestimate that time of possession learning. A personal experience of possession learning is worth 10 times or even 100 times of teaching by his teachers. After mastering ice release, Hyojin immediately studied the application of ice release ninjutsu. The lesson of losing Clone a last time made Hyojin understand that it doesn't matter if he can't win, but if he can't escape, then everything is over. Why did Yondaime Hokage catch up from behind, overwhelm the Sannin in terms of momentum, and finally win the position of Hokage? The reason is very simple. With the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, he firmly grasps the initiative on the battlefield, where to fight, when to fight, and who to fight. These are all decided by him. On the battlefield, if my side has the advantage, 4 generations can infinitely expand that advantage. And if the enemy has the advantage, 4 generations can infinitely reduce the disadvantage of my, so that the enemy can't disperse their forces to expand their advantage. The 4th generation single-handedly demonstrated the importance of mobility. Therefore, after mastering ice release, the first ninjutsu that Hyojin studied was not the powerful offensive ninjutsu, but the ice release ninjutsu that can improve one's mobility. In the battle with Sasori, Sasori's ice puppet once displayed an ice release ninjutsu that uses ice release to create an ice track, and then moves on the smooth ice track. This kind of ice release ninjutsu can indeed enhance the mobility of a ninja, but because the ice track is too close to the ground, the extension of the ice track is affected and limited by the terrain. So once you encounter complex terrain, the improvement of mobility will be very limited. Among the enemies that Hyojin has to face, Obsidian can use space ninjutsu, Mutsu can use earth ninjutsu, Konin can use paper release to fly, Kakuzu's mask also has a certain flying ability, and Dead Ale, who may join the Akatsuki organization in the future, also has the ability to fly, so a mere ice track ninjutsu cannot meet Hyojin's needs in terms of mobility. Therefore, he developed a new way to use the ice mirror crystal, which is to expand the ice release ninjutsu from a battlefield control ninjutsu to a mobile ninjutsu. And the effect is far beyond Hyojin's expectations. In terms of mobility, the ice mirror technique has a speed comparable to that of a bird of prey, and because the ice mirror can be suspended in the air, it is not affected by the terrain and can fly at a low altitude. In addition, the ice mirror technique has a strong protective ability for the ice release ninja. So when using the ice mirror technique, Hyojin is almost immune to most physical attacks and ninjutsu attacks. Unless someone can destroy all the ice mirrors at once, it will be very difficult to pose a threat to Hyojin, who is hiding among them. The only drawback is that the chakra of the ice mirror technique consumes a lot of energy, and if it is maintained for a long time, it will be a huge burden on the user. But the clone B that has fused with Haku's unparalleled affinity with the ice release chakra, coupled with the support of the Ryumyaka chakra, the consumption of the chakra of the ice mirror technique is really nothing for Hyojin. On the ground, the 3 generations Naruto was galloping in the forest. His face was gloomy, and his eyes were solemn. As a Naruto, he needs to consider more problems than the average my ninja. Tonight's sudden incident, if not handled properly, would lead to immeasurable consequences. Therefore, from now on, he had to be extremely cautious with every step he took. How did he sneak into the village? Is his purpose really just the bounty money? Where did he kill Watanabe? As he stared at the long row of ice mirrors flickering in the air, many questions welled up in Sandame's mind. There was no fighting in the Kumo envoy's encampment, which means that Watanabe was not attacked in the encampment. This also means that Watanabe, who was supposed to stay in the encampment, got rid of the Mai Umbu who was protecting him and sneaked out of the encampment for some purpose. Watanabe's sneaky behavior undoubtedly shows that Kumo village has other plans. I hope it has nothing to do with the Uchiha clan. The 3 generations doesn't worry about anything else. What he is most worried about is Kumo and Uchiha colluding together to attack Mai from both inside and outside. If the situation really develops to that point, even if Mai can survive in the end, Mai's losses will probably be unprecedented. At this time, the 3 generations looked back at the team behind them. Running for a long time is a huge burden for ordinary ninjas, so at the moment, only the elites of the Umbu are following closely behind the 3 generations. Some newcomers who joined the Umbu not long ago were left far behind. As for the Kumo Envoys team, because most of them are Chunin and Genin, most of them have fallen behind, leaving only the Jonin at the end of the team. Frowning, the 3rd generation king Yinlua's spotted face revealed a trace of helplessness. The current most serious problem of Mai's Naruto faction is that the death of 4 generations is a heavy blow to the Naruto faction. In a flash, the 3 generations converged the helplessness on his face, and his expression became firm. As the Naruto, he must set an example and must not show the slightest weakness, which will make his subordinates feel hesitant. I can't delay any longer. After saying that, the 3 generations bit his finger, his hands quickly printed, and shouted, "Psychic Jutsu!" Bang! In a burst of white smoke, a strong ninja ape jumped out. After a few jumps, the strong ninja ape caught up with the 3 generations Naruto, who didn't stop using Psychic Jutsu, and asked, "Yuan Fei, who is the opponent?" Chapter 182. The demonic ape did not hesitate and immediately shouted, "Transform!" Bang, with a low muffled sound, another cloud of white smoke rose. Almost at the same time that the demonic ape used the transformation technique, 3 generations leaped high into the air. When 3 generations figures were about to fall, the ever-lengthening Vajra, wishful steel rod penetrated the white smoke and reached the feet of 3 generations, carrying his body forward at a rapid speed. The speed at which the Vajra wishful steel rod elongated was far beyond the imagination of others. In just a few breaths, it carried 3 generations and caught up with the magic mirror ice crystal that was flying in the air. Seeing 3 generations chasing after him with the ever-lengthening Vajra wishful steel rod, Hyojin, who was hiding in the magic mirror ice crystal, was taken aback. At this time, 3 generations, who had caught up with the magic mirror ice crystal, took a deep breath, and his chest swelled to the limit. Then he shouted in a low voice, "Fire escape! Multiple fire dragon flame bullets!" Whoosh! In an instant, 3 generations spewed out several fire dragons that were so hot that people could not open their eyes, swallowing the long row of ice mirrors. Hyojin's reaction was not slow. When 3 generations made the hand seals, he used the water clone technique. Under the cover of the brilliant fluorescence on the magic mirror ice crystal, he quietly left the magic mirror ice crystal. Therefore, he barely escaped and was not engulfed by the flames that filled the sky with the magic mirror ice crystal. Landing gently on a big tree, Hyojin looked up at the flames that illuminated the whole sky like it was daytime. He murmured, "3 generations are not old yet." At this time, 3 generations landed on a big tree opposite Hyojin, holding the shrunken Vajra wishful steel rod in his hand, staring coldly at Hyojin. Hyojin laughed dryly. "I didn't expect Naruto-sama to know this trick." 3 generations said coldly, "Whoever dares to commit murder in Mai, no matter who you are, you won't be able to escape Mai's pursuit." Looking at the murderous 3 generations, Hyojin's throat felt a little dry. Honestly speaking, Hyojin had always looked down on 3 generations subconsciously, feeling that he wasn't worthy of the title of strongest Naruto. After all, the strength of the first generation was obvious to all. In the shinobi world, even counting the Otsutsuki family of the mythical period, there are only a handful of shinobi that can beat Hashirama one-on-one, and the 3 generations are obviously not one of them. However, there is no doubt that the 3 generations were not weak. If one were to estimate the strength of the current 3 generations based on the 3 generations' aging state in a few decades, it would undoubtedly be a huge mistake. Pitter-patter. Sure enough, not long after the ice wall appeared, it began to rain. Hyojin, who was hiding behind the ice wall, chuckled and said, "If I don't borrow the power of the sky, I'm afraid I'm not your opponent, Naruto-sama." Whoosh! At this time, a figure passed through the curtain of rain and fell beside the 3 generations. Looking at the huge ice wall in front of them, these late Umbu members all had a dignified expression. Obviously, the scene in front of them was beyond their expectations. Under the mask, Hyojin frowned and immediately said, "Naruto-sama, you'd better make these small fries stay away." Just 3 generations alone, Hyojin was already tired of dealing with them. If a large number of Umbu were added, then it would be difficult for him to control his strength and not hurt the innocent. The 3 generations also knew what it meant to fight with a powerful ice-release ninja in the rain. So he ordered the Umbu around him, "You guys back off." The Shadow Guard captain quickly said, "Naruto-sama, let us stay." The 3 generations shook his head and said, "All of you back off. I will deal with him. You guys guard the surroundings. Don't let him escape." In the face of the order of the 3 generations, all the Mai Umbu members, including the Shadow Guard captain, retreated far away and scattered into a huge circle, surrounding Hyojin and the 3 generations in the center. Hyojin, who was behind the ice wall, looked at all this indifferently. He didn't take the opportunity to attack. He waited until his colleagues Kakashi and Guy retreated. Then he slowly raised his hands and said, "Naruto-sama, you have to be careful." Humph! The 3 generations clenched the Vajra wishful staff in his hand and snorted coldly. After completing the hand seals, Hyojin looked at the drizzling sky and shouted, "Ice release, ice rain." Chapter 183. Looking at the countless iced Shinbin in the sky, the 3 generations showed a rare look of surprise. With such a large scale of ice release, regardless of its power, just this exaggerated range and number is enough to make this ice release ninjutsu into the ranks of S-class ninjutsu. At this time, Hyojin stretched out his right hand indifferently and gently clenched his fist. In an instant, the countless ice qianbin hovering in the air like bullets shot from all directions towards the three generations Naruto on the ground. The three generations' face sank and shouted, "Earth release enchantment! Earth prison tango!" Rumble, with a roar, the mud and stones tumbled and quickly formed a hemispherical earth cover, protecting the three generations inside. Shwa, shwa, fwa. Almost at the same time that the Earth Prison Tango was formed, countless ice qianbin shot towards the stone wall of the Earth Prison Tango with a sharp whistling sound. Although the destructive power of ice qianbin is not strong, but there are too many of them. Even if each ice qianbin can only scrape off some dirt from the Earth Prison Tango, thousands of ice qianbin are enough to smash the Earth Prison Tango. Therefore, Sandame-sama, who was hiding inside the Earth Prison Dano, pressed his hands on the stone wall, supplying chakra to the Earth Prison Dano, and repairing the earth cover created by the Earth Prison Dano. Outer Circle. Looking at the situation on the battlefield, the Mai Umbu's face was gloomy. Only now do they understand why the three generations didn't let them get involved in this battle. Although they have a way to deal with the ice qianbin in the sky. But if they have to resist it, they will definitely suffer a lot of casualties. The Cloud Jonin's eyes flashed. Like the Mai Umbu next to him, he didn't expect that a bounty ninja would be so strong that he can compete with the three generations Naruto. This bounty ninja is not ordinary. I must report this matter to Leing-sama. In the shinobi world, every powerful shinobi is worthy of the attention of the major shinobi villages. Not to mention the one in front of him is a strong shinobi who can wrestle with three generations of Naruto. Thinking of this, the Kumo Jonin paid even more attention to Hyojin's every move on the battlefield. At the other end of the encirclement, guy, who was squatting on a big tree, looked at the battlefield and muttered, "I really didn't expect this guy to be so powerful." Beside him, Kakashi also had a solemn expression. Even though he had tried his best to overestimate his opponent, the strength displayed by his opponent still exceeded his expectations. However, Kuroto, who is extremely talented in combat, also discovered that this terrifying ice release ninjutsu is using the power of the heavens, so he wasn't scared by the scene in front of him. Instead, he pondered on a way to counter it. In the village, an Uchiha clansman quickly found Jishui, who was still staying near the Kumo mission station, and inquired about the details of Watanabe's abduction. Jishui naturally won't tell the truth, so he casually said a few words with the excuse of "I don't know." The Uchiha clansman didn't suspect anything and casually said, "Patriarch has already summoned the police force's Jonin squad, and they will soon set off to hunt down the bounty ninja who attacked the Kumo mission." What? Jishui was taken aback. With the current antagonistic attitude between the Uchiha clan and the village, unless Naruto personally gives the order, otherwise, according to common sense, the Uchiha clan shouldn't care about this matter. After calming down, Jishui asked, "Was it Naruto-sama who gave the order?" The Uchiha clansman shook his head and said, "No, Naruto-sama has already set off to hunt down the bounty ninja." Jishui suddenly froze, and immediately, without saying a word, his figure flashed and rushed out of the village on the battlefield. Hiding behind the ice wall, Suijin saw Sandame-sama use Earth Prison Tendo to transform the Earth Release enchantment used to trap the enemy into an Earth Release enchantment to protect himself, and thought to himself, as expected of the professor of ninjutsu. The Earth Prison dungeon that can continuously repair itself is indeed very effective against the ice rain that had a large range and a large number of attacks, but the power is limited. After a while, all the ice in the air bombarded, but the Earth Prison dungeon seemed to be unscathed. Suddenly, Hyojin, who had Byakugan activated, noticed that the three generations in the Earth Prison dungeon were making hand seals. What kind of ninjutsu is this? Hyojin frowned, although he has mastered a lot of ninjutsu, but compared to the three generations, it is far from enough. As soon as this question appeared in his mind, he stumbled and fell to the ground. At this time, he found that the ground under his feet has turned into a moving swamp, and in just a breath or two, his body has sunk into the swamp. Oh no! After a cry, Hyojin let his body sink in the swamp and quickly made hand seals. Ice release, ice flower. The moment the hand seals were completed, Hyojin used his ice release ninjutsu, and in an instant, the churning swamp was frozen into a large piece of frozen land by the ice flower and stopped moving. With half of his body stuck in the frozen ground, Suijin breathed a sigh of relief, only to find that Sandaime-sama had already rushed out of the Earth Dungeon Hall and was heading towards him with the King Kong wishful staff. Hyojin, who couldn't care less, shook hard and broke out of the frozen land. At this time, the three generations had already bypassed the huge ice wall and swung the stick at Hyojin, who had just broken out of the frozen land and had not even fully stabilized his body. Hyojin had no choice but to take out a kunai from his waist and barely blocked it. Clang! The kunai, forged by fine steel, collided with the King Kong wishful stick, and suddenly there was a burst of ear-piercing sound. Then, Hyojin felt a huge force coming from the kunai in his hand, and his whole body was thrown away. Boom! After flying a long distance, Hyojin hit a big tree and stopped his body. So much strength! Feeling the huge pain coming from his wrist, Hyojin was surprised. The three generations looked thin and weak, but their strength was not small. Coupled with the support of the King Kong wishful stick that the demonic ape had transformed into, Hyojin's water escape clone body had no chance of winning. Swish, swish, swish. At this time, the three generations shot a few shurikens at Hyojin. After shooting the shurikens, the three generations quickly made hand seals. In the blink of an eye, they had made 2 or 3 seals in a row. Hyojin did not dare to be careless. He quickly made hand seals and shouted, "Ice escape! Magic mirror, ice crystal!" In an instant, ice mirrors with cold air appeared in front of Hyojin, arranged into several layers of ice escape, protecting Hyojin inside. At this time, the shurikens shot by the three generations were divided into 2 in the air, and then into 4. There were only a few shurikens at first, but in the blink of an eye, they became a large group. Three generations' mobility, although the Naruto Umbu is the worst, is still far better than ordinary ninjas. Especially with the help of the Vajra Wishful Rod, they can almost instantly catch up with Hyojin's magic mirror ice crystal. Therefore, it is unrealistic for Hyojin to rely on mobility to get rid of three generations. In addition, there is also a circle of my Umbu around the battlefield. These my Umbu are almost all elites. Among them are not only Hyojin's teammates Kakashi and Guy, but also the entire Shadow Guard of three generations. Not to mention three generations, just these people alone are enough to give Hyojin a headache. Looking up at the night sky again, Hyojin found that the rain cloud created by three generations' multiple fire dragon bullets has been exhausted. At this time, although the night sky is still gloomy, it is no longer raining. Sigh, the time and the place are not on my side. After sighing softly in his heart, Hyojin calmed his mind. Even if he is in a desperate situation, he will not admit defeat. Not to mention that this time, at most he will lose a clone. Jishui, who is galloping, constantly encountered his Umbu colleagues who have fallen behind. Through the communication with these Umbu members, Jishui's doubts not only did not subside, but also accumulated more and more. Ice release, ninja. Wasn't it Senpai who took away Watanabe's body? Shursui had always thought that the one being hunted by Hokage-sama at this moment was Suijin himself, so he hurriedly rushed over, but he didn't expect that the one being hunted by Hokage-sama was actually a mysterious ice-release ninja. Is it Senpai's friend? He saw with his own eyes that Hyojin left with Watanabe's body, so following this line of thought, he felt that maybe Hyojin handed Watanabe's body to a friend, and then this person was targeted by three generations. With full of thoughts, Jishui used body flicker technique with all his strength and almost disappeared without a trace. Looking at Jishui, who disappeared in front of him in an instant, an Umbu member who was familiar with Jishui couldn't help but secretly sigh. As expected, a body flickers Jishui. After a while, Jishui finally arrived at the battlefield, but he did not rush into the battlefield, nor did he reveal his identity to the Umbu members guarding the periphery, but hid in the crown of a big tree and looked at the battlefield from afar. At this time, on the battlefield, Hyojin and 3 generations fought again. Because Hyojin used a lot of water release and ice release, the entire battlefield was filled with water mist and cold air, and it was difficult to see clearly from a distance. Sure enough, it's an ice release ninja. After confirming that the person targeted by 3 generations was really an ice release ninja, Jishui immediately hesitated.